recording. And I'd like to move up 8.2 and 8.4. So we got some guests here tonight. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So I guess we will go with 8.2, co-curricular. Andy, I believe.
Sure.
You ready?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Born ready, he says.
Born ready all the time. So just going into the co-curricular handbook, all the changes have been noted as we go through. Just 24. Then there's not a whole lot that we've changed in this year's co-curricular handbook except the dates for mid. We added a club there. That's just one of the extra clubs that we've had here. We can keep going. We'll get into the dates where we're mid-trimester and end of trimester for our grade checks and things like that. Hard time seeing there. There we are.
You're saying that because it's Brandon's first time clicking into it.
Come on, buddy. That was good.
Trouble so much.
So we did add their students who are unable to improve their grades to passing after 2 weeks will be dismissed from that club or team. So that's, we run into that with several sports where a kid is suspended at mid-trimester for not having passing grades. And what we've done in the past is we have them attend tutoring sessions each night to be eligible for the second half of practice. A lot of those students that don't choose to go to the tutoring sessions just skip out on practice, and after a while, they are still considered part of the team. But after 2 weeks, we're like, what's the point of them continuing with the team anymore? So that was one of the changes we made there. So after that 2 week, where they're not passing, we're going to dismiss them from that team. Because they're really not committed to that team at that point with trying to get their grades up. Change semester to trimester on point number 4 there.
Just a thought on that, do you think there's an advantage of having them be on the team and trying to get their grades up, or
Yeah, so that's why we did change the tutoring sessions, because prior to that, they were just ineligible. They weren't able to go to practice, they weren't able to go to games until they had their grades up. So we held that carrot out there to, if they attended tutoring sessions each night after school for the first hour, then they were eligible to go to the second hour of practice. The students that we find are going to those tutoring sessions are passing their classes. It's been a huge, I would say, I can't give you a definite number, but the overall majority of those kids that are going to those tutoring sessions are passing their classes. The ones who choose not to are no longer.
How many kids would you say that change in language will likely affect in a season?
In a season, it does depend on the season it is. Okay. If I could just take one of the ones from this last spring, we had a team that would probably have had 6 kids on that team that would, out of 15 total, that would be released from the team. Now, they never had their grades, they never got them up to passing, so they wouldn't have been able to compete anyway. It was the rest of the year. I continued to check on it throughout the rest of the trimester, talk to them, ask them to continue to come into the tutoring, and they just didn't.
So you're thinking if they're going to
they just kind of gave up.
2 weeks is plenty.
Yeah. It's a big part of the season. When you look at the winter season, the majority of the kids chose to go to the tutoring sessions where you have maybe 2 or 3 out of the total that did not choose to attend the tutoring sessions and just kind of accepted that they were going to be in that failing status for the remainder of the trimester.
It leaves the coaches in a weird lurch when these kids are kind of on the team, not really on the team, and then also other athletes that are wondering where their place in the team is. If that kid comes back, do I still get a spot? And it really leads a lot of uncertainty when the kid has been given every opportunity to pass those classes and be successful. The number of kids failing is drastically reduced from where we have been. So it's nice to be able to fine tune as opposed to sitting here. It wasn't that many years ago that our F list was pages and pages and pages and dramatically impacted all of our sports. So that number is much better.
It is. Any other questions on that point?
Is the tutoring available for prevention too? Like if somebody was like, ooh, this is really hard, can they go see the tutor?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
Yep. They can actually, we've worked out with not just the tutor who's on for that night or assigned to that night, but we've also got those kids working with the actual teacher of the class that they're not passing. So we've been improving things as we've been going along. So they have to sign in with the official tutor, but as long as they have agreement to go see the actual teacher of the class that they're failing at that time, we make modifications that they can go be with that teacher for the remainder of the evening for that hour. And it's helped a lot, because not every tutor that's assigned to that night knows the calculus, knows the actual coursework that kid needs help with. So those adjustments have helped out a lot. And then just with the Phoenix program, we've set a percentage there so that we have a definite make or break point for those students to be either passing or failing. Instead, we were kind of working with that person to kind of get a guess where that kid is, but now we have a definite structure for that.
And what a positive thing that our kids who are in Alt Ed, that's what Phoenix is, our alternative education program, still want to engage in athletics, whereas there was many years that once a student went to an Alt Ed program, they wanted nothing to do with anything at the high school. And so this shows us that they are getting their academic needs met through Phoenix, but still want to engage in the rest of the high school experience, which is, in my opinion, a positive change.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, we're just getting into the kind of the ending pieces there. Some we did the transportation. We can keep going down a little bit more. Transportation. We're just making sure that the athletic director knows that we have an alternate transportation form that we're having the parents fill out now. Let's say that a student wants to ride home with another parent. We're having everybody be involved with that conversation, not just a parent and a coach. It comes through myself, goes through our high school admin team, and then making sure that the person that's picking them up and the parent that is allowing their kid to ride with that parent are all involved with that conversation, and we're not just guessing who they might be jumping in the car with. Just tightening things up a little bit.
Are you doing that right now, Andy, or next year?
We did that last year. I just added the form into this so that they made sure that it says in the handbook that we have to have that form completed ahead of time. Can't be just a last minute thing, hey, we're gonna have this kid jump in. Obviously there's circumstances where an emergency happens with the family, and we talk with the coaches. Coaches usually will call me and we'll work with that situation at that point. But if it's something that we know ahead of time, we wanna make sure that we have everything filled out and we keep it for record too.
So if this is extracurricular activities, would this be like more than just athletics? This be
Yeah.
like
Close to.
all the clubs and prom and
FFA.
stuff maybe?
Choir, band, all those things. Yep. And all those people work really well with us on all of those things, the transportation pieces, and if they're not real sure about what, they contact me right away and we go through that process.
Andy and Christy at transportation are inseparable.
She's
most
on my
seasons.
favorites. I mean, she's my number one contact person because there's things that come up all the time. So we're tight. She works with me really well with all these situations.
Getting canceled and changed. And
Yep. She's great. And then if anything that's kind of left over would be just some date changes and things like that. Other than that, we're kind of finalized with all the changes.
So as I said in your notes, that once the handbooks are approved by the board, we view these as board policy for the year. And so we do ask for your approval on all of those changes.
Shall I make a motion to approve the co-curricular handbook?
I'll second.
all right, it's been motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Andy, thank you.
What's that?
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
As to talk about this for a little bit?
Yes.
So this is part of the core agenda. This is also this is the first time that you're viewing the data in this way, because that was the agreement with the MOU with the Ho-Chunk Nation Education Department. We've for a long time talked about our participation rates, and that has been shared with you. And Michelle Woods at the high school works with Andy to put this together. And so you can see each one of our sports seasons as we go through. It's interesting to me to note the amount of participation and the differences between the different seasons, right? So fall sports, which I think is sometimes the toughest because we don't come back to school until late in August. Many of those sports start practices the first week in August, and so those kids are essentially giving up a couple weeks of summer vacation freedom in order to be in their sport. But 36% of our high school students are engaging in a fall sport. It goes down to 24 in the winter and then up to 34 in the spring. Those numbers are certainly duplicated. There's a lot of the athletes that are all three seasons, and there are some within a sport that are dual sports, right? Could you?
Not many, but
Yep.
it's a few.
Is that primarily spring, or is there other?
We've had some in the fall with cross country and swimming, so that's been a very successful one, and it's we have a young lady who navigated that very well. But it's not an easy thing for students to do, to have dual sports. We make them choose a primary sport where they need to be committed to that sport for the majority of things. But if there is an opportunity for them to compete, if there's nothing happening in their primary sport, then they're able to compete with that other team.
Golf and shooting too.
Golf and shooting has worked out great.
But usually,
Because shooting is it's so adjustments, and it's on weekends and things like that for practices. But for actually like WIAA sports, swimming, cross country worked pretty decent there. It's difficult. We've had kids that tried to do volleyball and cross country, and that just didn't work out because you're working with a team for that volleyball position, and you need to be there all the time.
So something that we wanted to talk about that Andy and myself and the high school administration talked about was the number of athletics that we offer. I don't know if you have heard feedback in the community, but there are people that are frustrated and feel that our athletic programs aren't as strong as they once were. There are many reasons that could be true, but there are also some fundamental systems things that we have created that, in my opinion, have kind of set us up for that scenario. Previous boards have taken the stance that if there's a group of kids that are interested in something enough, we should make it happen, move heaven and earth so that it can happen. And that has led us to offering a lot of sports, even if they are small teams. We offer an awful lot. When I think about girls hockey, the fact that our girls hockey team it's us and Sparta and Toma and
Neilsville, Granton, Melrose, Mindoro, Whitehall.
okay, so those are our schools, and they compete against a team that is the Stevens Point School District, the Wisconsin Rapids School District, and the numbers of the number of teams schools that they pull together. So one of them that we are repeatedly struggling to field a full team is soccer in the fall. You can see that we had 10 participants. You cannot start a game with less than 11. You need 11 before they will even allow you to start a game. We do co-op with Melrose Mindoro on that, boys soccer in the fall, but their numbers are down as well. When Andy looked at the ages of our groups, we had a large group of seniors in that soccer team.
There's a lot of opportunities for girls in the fall. There you have most of them, except for, well, I guess they can play football too, but there's, pretty much. So.
Which was part of why I wanted to put up what our total participation is, because 36% of your students engaging in a WIA sport at any given time, that is right in the averages. That is very common. But we divide our athletic talent by an awful lot of teams. And I guess just wanted to invite a conversation about your beliefs around that. whether you think we should maintain these sports at all costs, if we should, how much do we carry other schools along for co-ops versus doing what's best for our students. I would tell you that swimming, that is a very individualistic sport, and we have a state champion on our team, and when she graduates, we will have 0 athletes. And so we're not going to offer a varsity swim team for someone that hasn't been,
We co-op with Blair Taylor and Elma Center, so they will still have athletes, but why would we host a co-op for 2 other schools to continue?
You have facilities, right? You have facilities that's just stuck a significant amount of money in the last 2 years.
We have a very active youth program, which is.
Yeah, but that's different, but I'm just saying, you have facilities that the community has paid taxes for and is invested in, so.
and so
I'm
at
not
some
advocating one way or the other, I'm just saying
Yeah.
there's a point to, we
It
shouldn't have
is.
spent the money on it if you think the program's gonna go away.
And I would love us to have more conversation about when a program goes away, does that mean it's dead forever? Or does that
Or
mean,
bring it back.
seriously, the amount of time that Andy spends coordinating for 4 athletes is unbelievable. And at some point, well, not even some point, right now, our high school athletic budget, it was so over budget. We took some money from the Kim's budget, she donated some to get around athletics. They are expensive by the time we travel, by the time we host events, by the time we pay coaches, by the time all of those things, these sports each come with a significant price tag. And I feel like it is a very nice thing to do to provide this for other communities. Nice doesn't enter into a budget. And when we are being asked to do more with less, I feel like that's got to be part of our conversation. Does that swim team exist without us until we get a group of athletes ready to swim at the high school level? And then that group of parents needs, what is that process for starting a team? Because honestly, soccer years and years ago, it was a group of parents that really wanted their kids to be able to play soccer. They volunteered to pay for it for about 5-6 years, and then their kids were all gone, and then soccer looked at us and said, hey, you've got a team, you've been competing, looks like you're supporting a soccer team. And so we have a soccer team, right? So I feel like there's 2 conversations. One, how do we want to serve our students and families, and how does that overlap with what other communities want us to do for them? And if we are going to support every sport, what does that mean for more success in fewer sports, if that makes sense? I actually, Nate Erickson is in a unique spot being an administrator at the high school and being one of the varsity coaches, and I just asked him his thoughts as we've talked about this. And so would you mind just sharing your thoughts on our offerings?
Yeah, so we were talking about this a little bit, and I kind of want to preface it, like my philosophy personally with athletics. I'm a huge proponent of it. I think athletics change school culture. I think have a really positive impact on academics and school and community as well. So when we're talking about this, I think what we're trying to have a conversation about what the philosophy of Black Earth Falls should be. And when I look at our number of sports that we offer for the size of our school, it's not the only factor into why our programs, I would say across the board, are struggling to be competitive. But I think it is one component, right? We offer every opportunity for kids to be involved in a sport, in different sports, and we're spreading our talent across the board, right? It's really hard to be competitive that way. And so I think a lot of the decision making is that where we want to go is we want to have a lot of opportunities for our kids. There's positives to that. But then there's also the other side of the coin. When we look at if we could limit our opportunities, and if we want to be more competitive, we're competing with other schools, right? And I guess that is the discussion we're having. Personally, I think just because I am a proponent of athletics and being competitive, and I I see a lot of positive in that, in teams and in families and in our student athletes. And I would be a proponent to continue this conversation of what our philosophy is. And I guess I would, I am a coach, right? And I coach the girls basketball team. And just limiting some of those opportunities to be more competitive. And so that's just where I come from. That's how I think of athletics. And I just kind of want to share a couple of those thoughts with you guys. So, yeah.
I have a couple of questions. One is, you can answer them in whatever order you want. What does competitive mean? If we have a state champion swimmer, are our more popular teams also state champions? Would you be more competitive? Are you worried about being competitive in picking the sports that we have the best shot at winning with, or the sports that are most popular for students? Second of all, my question is, if you're talking about, are you talking about cutting funding from sports? By cutting, like if we get rid of this because sports are expensive, we will be able to save money and put it towards academics? Or are you simply saying, if we cut 4 of these sports, we can pour all that money into 4 other sports and they will be better? And if it's that second one, how is the money going to improve student performance?
Yeah, and I'm not so much not advocating, I don't think it's a money thing, right? As far as like being competitive, right? I'm more, what I see, I've been here for a couple of years now, is the spreading of talent. We just don't have, we aren't big enough, we are not a big enough school, in my opinion, to support all these sporting opportunities and be competitive, right? In a general sense, right? Yeah, we have some outliers, we have some people having some success, but if you look at our records across the board, we aren't up to par, I would say, with our surrounding schools. So I don't know so much about the funding. I'm talking more about the competition, being competitive at a athletic level. And I can't remember what your first question was. I don't know if that answered it.
Well, if you want to be competitive, are you talking about trying to find what other school districts are good at and then finding the niche they're not good at and pouring our efforts into less
Now we're talking.
used sports so we can really have powerhouse in field hockey or whatever it might be? Or are you talking about saying, no, we really want to up the football budget, whether that's all lost cause or not?
Yeah, I'm more looking at numbers, right, and looking at the sports. That when we're looking at numbers coming through, are they going to be able to field a team, right?
Number of athletes,
number
not
of
budget
athletes,
numbers.
yeah.
Just to be
Yeah,
clear, I just want to be
number of
clear when we say
athletes,
numbers, we're
right.
talking number of athletes versus budget.
Yep, and so the way that I look at it, right, is so you have a team, right, that needs a certain amount of people, and if they don't have that certain amount of people that they need, every sport's a little bit different. I think about it as those athletes. If that opportunity is not there, they're probably participating in another sport that's offered in that season, right? And it's just a numbers game, right? The more people you have, the more opportunity I think that your team will be successful, and then you have those student athletes in your program for a longer amount of time, right? The less opportunities they have, they're going to be in that sport for a longer amount of time, which I think will breed success, right? And so that would be my opinion on that.
I feel like before we have the conversation, we need to really understand whether or not these kids that we are assuming are going to jump from one sport to another are actually going to. So I don't know.
So I just want to be clear, we are not, thank you very much.
Yes.
We are not proposing that we look at this list and start crossing people off. That is not what the proposal was, so I just want to take a breath and recognize that. We are not suggesting that. We are saying we need some decision-making rules around how long do we string a sport along when there are so few athletes? Because it is embarrassing, I will use that term. Last fall, our soccer team, in which we co-op, had to cancel some games because they didn't have enough players, because we had some eligibility and we had some injuries between us and Melrose Mindoro. And so other teams sat there with a hole in their schedule because we weren't able to field a team. That's embarrassing. And we had to notify them
Last minute.
last minute for sure, but they don't want to be in a conference with a team that is that unstable, right? Like right now, the whole fall schedule is already done. And so when we wait till the week of to cancel a game, that team has a really hard time filling that hole. If we could at the beginning of the season say, we're not gonna have a team this year, we don't have enough players to field it, then they can look at their whole season and try to add some additional games in. But when it's so last minute, there are parents who have taken off of work to travel for a game and then we pull out at the last minute. It doesn't bode well for our partnership in that conference. Our concern with soccer is last year we said we don't have enough sign up. We don't have enough kids signed up from Black River and Melrose combined. We're not going to have a team. There was a large group of seniors. They went and told everybody and their cousin. We had 25 kids sign up for soccer in the spring, and we had 14 kids for some games. So it's this, and it's not, it doesn't feel good to anybody because those kids that soccer is their favorite sport. They feel like we're jerking them back and forth whether we're going to offer a team or not, and that is certainly not our intention. We just don't want to have to make that decision every single week whether we have a team or not. So what we are suggesting is, and this was years ago, I would have to reread the policy now, but at that time the board had a philosophy that said we enter into athletic co-ops to help augment the programming that Black River Falls is doing, not to rely on it. So girls hockey, that would not be the case right now, but there's very strong co-op partnerships and numbers are not in danger. We just don't have the majority of them, but they're very strong. The boys soccer co-op is the one that is just, there's just not enough numbers. So what we wanted to do was give everybody the deadline for sign up, and if there are 11 athletes from Black River Falls, meaning we could start a game with all Black River Falls athletes that sign up, we say, great, we're open for those kids from Melrose Mindoro to come. Pardon me?
We're moving forward.
Yep, we're moving forward. And then we thought that after the first 2 weeks of practice, if those kids don't actually come, if they're not showing up on a regular basis, we pull the pin then as opposed to day by day before the team. And you're going to hear about that because, again, there are some people who love the sport, but it's a team game. You can't play with fewer than that number. And the reason that this is also so important is because we currently have a club girls soccer team at the high school, not WIAA. It is a club team, and there's a parent from that group that has asked if they could come before the board and ask for the school to make girls soccer, which is a spring sport, a WIAA school-sponsored sport, which would mean we currently spend this much money and then we need uniforms and transportation and coaches and officials and a huge slice of Andy's time, right? All of that would have to go into it. So we're looking for some opinions from the group as to what sits with you, what makes it okay. Our recommendation on the girls soccer is this past year was the first year that it was purely club, and there was on the sign-up sheet, how many was it?
I can't remember the exact numbers, but the majority of them were seniors and they graduated this year.
And there wasn't, because it was a club, it wasn't the accountability that you will be here every night for practice. You will all travel to this game. It was very loose. And so what our intentions were, it is per WIAA, we are too late right now to add another sport for next year. Anyway, what we are suggesting is that we track the girls' club soccer next spring, see how many girls play at club, how many show up regularly, how many are eligible, all of those things, and if they can maintain, because right now we're not co-op with anyone, right? If they can maintain 15 throughout the entire season, then maybe we can talk about offering that as a sport. But without some evidence that they really do have the numbers, we're going to be in the same boat that we are with boys soccer.
So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
And correct, I don't know, this is
Yep.
so out of my element. Is this a Title IX issue? Where we could get in trouble if we're putting together a boys soccer team when they don't have the numbers, and then we have a girls soccer team who doesn't have the numbers? And we say, you don't have the numbers, and they can just point to the boys soccer team and say, what gives? Is this a legal liability?
So Title IX is not sport for sport. It's not if you have boys, you must have girls. It is total offerings. And because we have other offerings for girls, we are balanced for Title IX. So we are okay. It's not the equal. And so that whole, some sports make it easier than others. We just started a girls wrestling program because we had coaches that were already engaging and we had girls that wanted to wrestle, and the rest of the region kind of divided, and so they operate kind of as one team, but yet still separate boys and girls, right? So that one works clean. Something like soccer, boys is fall, girls is spring. When we first started boys soccer, we had some girls who played in the fall, and it was a co-ed fall soccer team, and that is very acceptable on to WIAA. And then the girls lost interest in that, and the club team started in the spring.
Would that be a solution?
There's no interest in that right now. They no longer want to play on the. And it is boys soccer is what WIAA calls it. So, but just girls can play on that team. Boys cannot play on the girls team in spring. That's per WIAA.
If you lose soccer, boys,
Yeah.
you will have to lose a girls' sport also, correct?
And so it is Title IX always talks about your intent and you're moving forward. So if for this fall we don't have soccer, if somebody made a Title IX complaint, we would have to talk to them about our planning and our long range, how we're monitoring and making sure that we are staying in compliance. So we think swimming is probably on its last lap, if you will. And so that is a girls' sport. And so so Title IX isn't like right now you must be in compliance. It's all about what your intent is and that you have plans moving forward. So I'm going to try to summarize all of this. Are you agreeable to our plan for boys soccer for this fall? We let people sign up, and then we watch the first week, 2 weeks of practice, and if we have 11 athletes that are eligible and uninjured that are regularly attending practices from Black River Falls and some co-op kids from Melrose Mindoro, we let that team live the schedule that Andy already has scheduled. If we do not have 11 from Black River Falls, that we just say, I'm so sorry, but boys soccer is not viable.
I struggle with the injury piece. Like if you're going to tie in a kid that gets hurt trying to participate in the sport, but they had the numbers before that individual got injured, I don't know that I would. This is me personally. I don't know that I would say, oh, you don't have the numbers for the sport. We had a kid get hurt. Okay. But if they're not participating, they're not showing up to practice. That's different.
Yes.
Okay. But
That's where we ran into issues in the mid-season last year. We had a lot of injuries that were happening, and they were trying to push those kids back into the field a lot sooner than they should have
sure,
to try to field
to
it
try to
when they
have
started,
it right.
which wasn't okay.
Yep.
Well, one thing too, if they do start the team and they don't have enough people to play and they're canceling the games, that would give the people that are healthy and are eligible, they could maybe do something else.
Correct.
If we did it early enough as opposed to limiting through the season.
Now,
That's
is there not already a policy like this for all the sports in general, that if you don't have the numbers, the sport doesn't go forward that year?
It's not as common as you would think that we're in this boat. Soccer was a recent ad, and honestly, if you look at most of the schools that we play, we have just under 500 students at our high school. Most of the schools that we play are 6, 8, even larger, 100 kids. That makes a big difference in your numbers. So
I think about Alex, I feel like we need a policy that like clearly states how that moves forward, but I feel also like really like the idea of taking into consideration like what's coming in. We've got like a really, really robust like kids, littler guys soccer,
and this much at the middle school.
right.
And so our short-term future is small.
Which brings up like my next point, which is can we come up with a policy on how to initiate a team, how to like go about that in a way that doesn't leave the parents solely responsible for making sure that financial needs are met, but when there's a need identified, like how do we move forward with that?
And so it's tough to say it's a need for a sport. I just want to be clear, right? Like there are schools that never even consider it. These are our offerings, come and play or don't. I was asking, what does this board think? If you want to be able to support if you want to be able to support the interests of these groups of kids, that's great. But if they are going to be WIAA, then it has to be on WIAA's timeline to be created as a sport. And we need to have those conversations when we're doing our budget, because what has happened is Andy has just been asked to do more and more and more as these sports have been added. So,
Well, and that's why I'm saying, like, I don't think it's in the best interest of kiddos to like engage them in a sport that they're not gonna be able to participate in because they don't have the numbers. But I do think it's important to have criteria to like, okay, we've got like, you know, so many kids interested, like what does that process look like? And having a more clear cut, like, here's how we add or here's how we take away a team.
so that's what we're suggesting for girls soccer for the spring. That was our idea. So this
Yeah,
year was the
I like
first
that
year.
one.
This is the first year that they were a club. Great, and now next year we track all of the things, and May 1st is the timeline to be introduced as a WIA sport. And so,
Just one extra thing I want to, like, we have to look at sports kind of individually because
Yes.
there are so many different, like, if we put everything under one umbrella for what we're going to put forward for a team, we have to be careful with that because some of our individual sports, we don't need the numbers like we do for swimming. But then you get into soccer where you have to have 11 physical players on the field at the time to start a game.
which is probably why we're talking more about that than we
Yeah.
are golf, where
Yeah.
you can have 3 good golfers or you can have 15 good golfers, right? So not all sports operate the same.
Right.
There's the Adaptive Sports League, which is slowly kind of coming up. I mean, at some
We've
point.
added that to the budget this year.
Yep, and that's co-curricular, right?
Co-ed.
Yep, co-ed.
Mhm.
Do they have the opportunity to letter?
Yes, they do.
They do.
They actually just were accepted to the NBC conference.
Okay.
So I've been working with the conference commissioners from the NBC about getting games home and away for each one of those sports.
Great.
So that one, our numbers are not faltering at all. We're doing really well with that. It's been a really, really positive thing across the board. And the athletic directors have been working with those things. They're very positive about the experiences they had with Black River Falls last year. We were on a probational period for a year just to see how we would perform and if we would have the numbers for games and if we would continue to show up on time and have the coaches there and have the kids knowing the rules and things like that. They were very impressed with how things were run last year and have accepted us with open arms. So, very good.
So, I mean, I think it sounds reasonable that if you don't have enough kids to play, that it just, you know, it makes sense. But what happens, like, let's say 10 years from now, there's a huge resurgence of soccer interest in the community and we have 15 kids who want to play soccer. What does that look like as far as timeline of getting it restarted
Sure.
if there's that interest in the future?
So Andy watches what happens at the middle school, and so that's part of our rationale for soccer as well. Currently, and you're absolutely right, the youth soccer program is really blooming again. There's a big jump from 3rd grade to high school, right? And right now, middle school does not have a lot of engagement in soccer, and we watched that in our community when youth soccer was not very active. And so we believe if we don't have enough numbers for soccer for this fall, it will likely be a couple of years that we won't have numbers. We would suggest the same idea, that start as a club and then let's track and monitor all of your participation, make sure they're following all of the rules that our other athletes would have to follow and still be eligible and all of those things. And if they are successful, since girls soccer is spring, May 1st is that timeline. I don't know the fall date for. It's probably February, it's probably January, it's probably middle of winter is when it probably is, but
Very early February.
I would say that we would give them a trial year first, and then if they were able to meet it and the projections looking down the previous years, that we would reinstate it.
So I think your suggestion for soccer makes perfect sense.
Okay.
I would furthermore say that when you gave the example of them saying, hey, we've only got 10 people and 14 more people signed up, that should be an option too. I think it would be a good idea to say, okay, here's the threshold, and to give people like a 2-week notice, we're not meeting the threshold, to give them a chance to get the numbers up. And then, like you said, if at 2 weeks in, they're not hitting the numbers, pull the plug. I would say that this needs to be done across the board, not just for picking a sport that looks like it's on the
But what
table.
does that look like for golf?
What it should look like is the athletic director should set what that number is for each sport. It should be the athletic directors. We have an athletic director, and they
So
should be able to say,
swimming, like,
if you have less than 3 swimmers, maybe we shouldn't have swimming.
but you just pulled 3 out,
No, I didn't. I'm making up a number.
and
What
I'm
I'm
saying
saying
so
is-
is he, and how,
But he's not. He's a professional, and we have
we
hired
have
him.
one swimmer next year, right?
Yeah,
We
we're
have
down to
one swimmer. Shall we tell her one is like that? Not all sports are created equal, right? So here's the other thing that I just want. So I talked about being part of a conference. When you're in a sport like volleyball, You go to play another team. All of that fan base and concessions, they are there to play your team. When you go to swim meets, there's often, not the single meets, but the weekend meets, there's like 5 or 6 different teams there. And so your one swimmer can get in and compete. And if your one swimmer isn't there, it's not a big
Well,
deal.
then that seems like that would still fit the criteria I set forward before. If the athletic director says 1 is the minimum number, then 1 can be the minimum number. If soccer needs 11, soccer can have 11. It doesn't change anything except say that each sport gets treated equally. You have one policy on the book for every sport. They will have it 2 weeks beforehand, send out an announcement saying we're not meeting enrollment, give people opportunity to enroll. 2 weeks after it starts, if they're not meeting enrollment, pull the plug. Whatever that number is determined by the athletic director. It can be 1. It can be 1 for golf. It can be 1 for swimming. It can be whatever you want to make it be. And then you have one policy. If somebody from, I'm not going to name a sport because I don't want to make a parent mad. If somebody from sport X says, well, hey, I don't like that policy, you can say, look, it's the same for volleyball, it's the same for soccer, it's the same for football. That covers the school complaint-wise. We have one policy. It could be spelled out in a paragraph this long in the handbook, and that's it. And then you have the discretion to run this however you want, because the athletic director can set what enrollment needs to be.
I think there's a piece to this too, from my standpoint too. If we look at our Native American students and what sports they're participating in and the percentage of the team that they're being, I think it would be good for us to just reach out and talk to them about which sports they want to see offered for their kids. I'm not saying that's, I just think culturally there might be certain sports that they have no interest in, and then there might be other sports that they would want to still see be there for their kids to participate in.
That changes year to year. I've
Sure.
seen that happen, and I'm not trying to say that you're wrong by that any means, Casey, but I see where a cool kid joins a sport that's Native American, and all of a sudden you've got 15 other Native Americans joining that kid in that sport. The next year you got a cool kid joining the other sport, and all of a sudden you have 15 joining that sport. So it does change year to year,
Okay.
and I've seen that quite a bit. But I like your point, but I don't know if I would like to
How
be
much
the
do you make
dictator
this?
of.
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
I knew that.
I think there
And,
needs to
and
be
so when you
some-
say the school is
yeah.
covered for complaints, let's be honest, if there is a parent advocating for their child, having something in writing is not gonna change their anger in any way, shape, or form. So you would be able to say, well, there's a policy for sure, but it's not gonna change their level of emotional engagement in any way that we have that
Well,
policy.
also, it doesn't allow for any sort of like long-term thinking. So if it's like 1 year where there's a dip in enrollment, but you have the next class coming up that's like super excited, it sounds like it's going to take at least a year, if not 2, to re-get that sport in, when it was just that 1 year, and especially if it's not a team sport that doesn't require a certain number of people. I just don't think there needs to be a number specified. I think it's too narrow.
The competitions look so different for each one of these when you're competing as an individual, like track, right? I mean, there's just so many sports that are either individual or you need a team.
Does the budget is typically based on need for cost per sport, right?
He's been given a lump sum, is what he's been given, and then it's
Are you
divided.
able to break that down by participation, number of students, Andy, cost per kid, or is it like this sport costs more because it just needs more?
It is. There's certain
So-
sports that cost a lot more than
Yep.
other sports. It's taken many years to get to that number in the budget.
So I mean,
So for hockey, if, for example, because we do so much co-oping, and that's an expensive sport because we're renting ice. So Jill has, each year she takes the total number of athletes participating, adds up every single cost associated with hockey, our ice rental, our coaching, our transportation, our officials, crowd control, all of the things, everything that it costs to do girls hockey, divides that number by the number of players, and then charges our co-op schools whatever that number is for each one of their players. Those schools can choose to either bill the family or they can pay for it. So we know the price per athlete.
so where I'm going with this, or how I'm trying to spin this, is that if rather than setting it as a amount of kids, you set it as a cost of the athletic budget number. So if your enrollment drops and your cost inflates to above X, the sport's not gonna sustain. So I could see this, I guess I could see the same thing with football. Like if we only had 11 kids playing football, we could put them out on the field, but we're spending a ton of money on equipment for football for 11 kids. So, like, and that's where I'm going, I guess, is that if we could put it to like, look, we're happy that cost per kid is X. It's this window, you know. And if your sport becomes more expensive than that, you either need to get your enrollment up or you need to drive your cost down. Figure out a way to get your cost out of the sport.
That would be
Does that mean you
so
don't get uniforms as much? You don't get, well, but think about it. I mean, maybe you can't have as much ice time in hockey. You know, maybe
I'm
you
just
can't.
thinking of the sports that literally kids buy their own tennis shoes for basketball. Schools provides basketballs and uniforms, right? And then the coaches and stuff like
But you
that.
only got to trot 5 of them out there in order to play a game.
Right, so
So-
your numbers are different.
Your numbers are different. So that takes the number piece and you turn it into the cost of the sport.
And if you wanna talk about making our sports more competitive, narrowing it down into things where we can get more bang for your buck
Yep.
is much more appealing than spending a huge portion of the athletic budget on an expensive sport.
So I
There's a lot of baggage in this.
I feel like we need a philosophy, whether we are concerned about being competitive, whether we are concerned about controlling costs, or whether we want our student athletes to be able to follow their interests and passions. And how do all of those things come together into our work,
I
right?
think what's important is the kids, right? And it's their path. I think we know that athletics bring a big part into future leaders. We know that athletics also help to drive ownership because the kids are now accountable to get their grades up if they want to play. You know, so I don't personally want to see 10 kids that could be playing a sport not being held to that same level of accountability anymore because their sport's not out there for them. That's all. That would be my argument with it. So
How do they do the boys and girls golf opposite?
Say again.
Why do
Yeah,
they,
you did that.
It's a WIA, I think.
seem like me in cross country and track and field, they do
It's the
this
same with
better.
tennis.
Tennis, golf, and soccer are opposite.
Volleyball would be. No, we don't do that.
Yeah, if we have a girls' holiday.
I think I'm struggling with the competitive piece. I mean, I'm naturally really competitive, so I get it, but I don't think that winning at the cost of some people not participating is like where I would want to land.
So just looking at some of our conference schools, I bring up a school name and I'm like, people will make a funny face, but Westby, they don't offer as many sports. They're a smaller school. Then you have Baroque, who offers everything. Right now, Westby's kind of manhandling Baroque on a lot of the sports that they're playing. And Baroque's not, because they are similar to us where they're offering so many options.
And so I fully understand that is your view. I'm telling you that I receive feedback from the community, and I'm asking you to also consider feedback from the community and the criticism that it's our athletes, it's our coaches, it's all of these things that the Tigers don't win like we used to. Oh, like we used to when we offered 3 sports? You're right, we do, right? And so I just need people to be cognizant that everything comes at a cost, I guess.
which sport are they talking? And we say the big sports, the sports that have probably the largest fan base that follow them is what they're concerned about, because we are winning state championships in sports. You know, we have girls down at state wrestling win, right? We have a state swimmer win. Those aren't sports that are pulling the community in to watch these kids perform at a high level, but yet these kids are accelerating, right?
And we try really hard to celebrate those kids. We
Absolutely,
absolutely
but
celebrate.
I guess that would be the argument I would push back on this community. I mean, just because we're not in the playoffs for football, which, I mean, I'm not saying I don't like it, okay? But I mean, that is the heartbeat of a lot of things that happen in the fall. And then you get into hockey and basketball in the winter seasons, and you know, I think our kids are doing great things. I think our community's just missing the fact that it's not the sports that they want it to be. So,
So I feel like we have some direction with soccer for this fall and girls soccer potentially for the spring. That we will track and monitor the club team, and by May 1st, we'll know whether we're bringing a recommendation to you or not.
I do think policy is important here though, that right now we know we don't have one, so I'd be curious, could we use the resource to see if there's some other schools that have adapted some sort of an athletic policy for when they decide to keep a sport, to reduce a sport.
I've asked Neola, they don't have
They've
anything.
got nothing.
I've asked some of my colleagues and
Is there any-
they say they
Same
default to
Same thing,
no.
it just kind of happens as it.
They default to no.
Right, yeah.
Alright,
It doesn't happen as often as you would think, and so when you tell the WIA, we're not sure if we're gonna have numbers to compete, they're kind of like, well, that's too bad, we don't hear it that often. You hear it about football from a few programs
Right.
every year.
8-man
because it's
football
kind
is
of-
growing for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is, so.
I mean, it makes sense, I guess, to me that there is not a specific policy because they're all so dramatically different in what they require and what sort of the, like, some are teams, some are individuals, some require a certain number of people, some don't. And so it seems like it's on more of like an individual basis as it comes up, especially since it doesn't sound like it comes up very often. So it makes sense to me that there's not one.
The expansive list of clubs at the end, our process for that is that students that are interested need to find an advisor willing to work with them. And the first year it is all volunteer, and there are some criteria that have been established for kind of what tier that club or group will be, and if they maintain that, then they ask to formally be recognized as a club, which means the advisor asks to be compensated, which is fair, but also then how do we control the other end of that? That it used to be a big thing and now kids have moved on to something else and the advisor remains with a very small number of kids, so. I honestly applaud the high school. I feel like there's a lot of movement in the clubs that we offer because it follows student interests, and I think that's great.
There's a lot of diversity in offerings.
All right. I feel like I have direction. If you guys are in agreement with the way I laid out the boys and girls soccer, the parent who asked if she could come to the board for girls soccer, I said that she could either let the admin, Andy, Kim, and Nate and I talk and make a recommendation and give her our recommendation. And if she liked it, great. And if she didn't, she could always come to the board. Or if she wanted to come to the board first, she could do that. And she was okay, particularly knowing that they had already missed the deadline to be WIA recognized for next year anyway. I appreciate the discussion. Thank you. Thanks, Andy.
All right. Moving on to 8.4. Nursing report.
Gotta start 6:01 and you're already 6 on the agenda.
Are you clicking? Good. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Johnson. I'm the school district nurse. This is our health services team. Basically consists of me and Dr. Rogers is our medical advisor, and then I delegate to a variety of staff within the district. I talked last year a little bit about delegation, but I wanted to hit on this topic a little bit again because I know we have some new members on the board. These are the basics of delegation within the school setting, which looks very different from delegation within the healthcare setting. By state law, we delegate a lot more nursing tasks in the school setting to people who do not have any sort of healthcare license. However, all that training must be done by me, like somebody who has been delegated a specific task, like a tube feeding. They cannot train someone else in that tube feeding. I have to go in and train someone else to do that tube feeding. So that it's got to be a direct line. Okay. There's a lot of information to push out to a lot of people in the district. Almost everyone who works for the district deals with something health related. Whether you're an aide doing a tube feeding, a food service worker handling food for allergy students, a teacher with a student with diabetes, a bus driver that has a child that has a seizure condition that's riding that bus for an hour a day. whether you're a school psychologist handling medical records and how that's, how those are taken care of, and many more. And then, of course, everyone in the district needs to know what their role is and how to respond to an emergency. So these are all the trainings that I do throughout the year, with a heavy dose of it in the beginning of the year. Next year, I'm going to get a little extra help, which I'm super excited about. We're not going to have a designated health aide. And to give you a little reference, I'm one nurse for, what do we have, 1,600 students in 4 buildings. And so that's a lot of running around, and there's a lot of things going on in any given building at any time. So it's not going to be an actual designated health aide. It'll be an aide who has other duties, but then has some designated time during the week to do specific health tasks. So these are some of these tasks are listed there. And one big issue that has been kind of a continual issue is the continual onboarding of staff during the year. And that's been a struggle for the last several years, where we have staff turnover throughout the year. And again, 4 buildings, and at any given time we might have some new aide or new teacher, whatever, and me getting the information of who that is and what kind of training they need, there's been kind of, that's been more difficult. So that's one big thing that this designated health aide will help to coordinate that. I still have to do the trainings, but they will help coordinate that and figure out who will be taking on what duties that are specific to the health related. So I'm excited about that. And I'm also really hoping that each building staff will feel more supported by having a point person that's actually in the building. And somebody that they can turn to. The staff are always welcome to reach out to me, and I come running over to, put a lot of miles on my car, running over to the different buildings throughout the day. But I feel like they will feel like, hey, there's somebody who has a little bit higher level of training in our building. So I think that'll be nice. And then screenings and follow-ups are another task that those elementary health aides will assist with too, which kind of leads me to the next slide. So every year I kind of like to talk about something that's a specific topic that I work with. And vision is one that's kind of near and dear to me. And I guess some facts about it is we only know what we can see. Every year when I do screenings with the littles, somebody will say to me, well, but I know how, I can see just fine. And like, well, you only know what you can see. You don't know if you're actually seeing everything that's there. I remember when I got glasses when I was in 2nd grade, I looked up and I'm like, you can see the leaves in the tree? That's crazy. I knew that there were leaves there, but they were kind of theoretical for me. I think that's an interesting point to think about. And then if left uncorrected, the brain can lose its ability to process new visual information around age 10. So this is why early intervention and getting glasses helps to connect all those synapses in our brains. And
Nice photo too, by the way.
What's that?
Nice photo.
So, and vision affects academic achievement, athletic and gross motor ability, and social and emotional development. While vision has genetic links, your child may not have the same vision issues that you have. And this is kind of something that's personal to me. I have twins, and when they're about 3 and 4, I was convinced that one of them had ADHD because Lucy would sit down and she would do her letters and she would color, and Lily would sit down and she'd scribble a little bit and then she'd run off. Never occurred to me that it would be vision related, because in my world I couldn't see the leaves in the tree, but I could always see my paper. And she would point out, oh, there's a plane in the sky, there's a bird. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, when I took them into that vision exam that's recommended before kindergarten, suddenly there's a lot of clicking going on, and I'm like, And both girls ended up with glasses, but Lily's were definitely thicker send-out glasses, and it was amazing when she got those glasses, she put them on every morning as soon as she woke up, and she didn't take them off until she went to bed. And that's a picture of them a week before kindergarten when they got those glasses. And they just graduated from high school, and she still puts those glasses on first thing in the morning. So that's why it's one of the reasons it's so, I just think about how much more success kids can have when they can actually see those letters, and they can actually see, and even in the social emotional development, when you can read all those nonverbal social cues and expressions on people's faces. So it's a really a large gap when they don't, when that vision goes uncorrected. So our vision screening statistics are that we screened 452 students. I screened in 4K first grade, 4K kindergarten and first grade, and then third and fifth grades. Those are my standard ones, and then if by teacher request for second and fourth grade. And of those, we referred 66 for full eye exams. That's about 14.6%. This has been a fairly consistent percentage in the 10 years that I've worked here. But what's a little concerning is that many times I'll have a student who is referred in fifth grade that was also referred in kindergarten and in first grade and in third grade, and there hasn't been a follow-up. And that's been very hard for me to manage, trying to follow up with all of those families and help them navigate the barriers and go ahead and get that follow-up care. So that's something I'm really hoping that the Forest Street and Red Creek Health Aides can assist with and really help some of those student outcomes. So then Medicaid billing, again, I talked about this last year, that we can bill Medicaid for direct nursing cares since you have a school nurse, and the nurse delegated cares. So my goal was to improve that because I realized that we were missing some students that we could bill for, and I do believe I've increased that, so I'm hoping that the goal is met. I don't have numbers on that. I really don't know what the numbers are with reimbursement, but I know that it does add up. So, okay, next. And then these are, what else does your school nurse do? These are some of the many things that I do throughout the year. There seem to be more and more 504s. We're getting more referrals for those. So that takes some time to go through that process for the ones that I'm involved in. I polished up the notes from the nurse. I've been kind of adding to that and improving that. That goes out in the elementary newsletters. And then every year there seems to be something new that I get to learn about. Like this year I had to issue an air quality alert during the last week of school, which made me yet again not one of the most popular people in the district. So
Maybe popular with me. I was glad about that one.
So yeah, but it was a little challenging with those littles, trying to keep them contained. But yeah, so I get to learn something new like that every year. And then actually I just reached out to Julie Teetens, and we're lining up some health messages to push out on Facebook throughout the summer, which is kind of a fun project. Okay, next, student accident reports. These are just our numbers. These are accidents or incidents that happen that are severe enough to either call EMS or refer to the clinic or the hospital, or that sort of thing that in our students. And so those numbers are a little bit variable, fairly consistent year to year though.
Do those include athletic related injuries?
So this reflects the ones that happen during school hours.
Okay.
The athletic ones also we do use the same form. We've streamlined some of that. I've worked with Andy with that so that we are making sure that we are documenting those injuries, particularly that occur on our grounds, right? You know, we kind of want to know what's happening, and then we can make sure that there aren't hazards that we could correct too. So, this is reflective of things that happen during the school day. Let's see, emergency preparedness. I have now actually also put an EpiPen into all of the main AED, which would be the most centrally located AED in each building, and with a sticker on there so that we have that available. we often go to other schools, and so I always look for, when I followed my kids around to different schools, I always look for the emergency prepared section and what that looks like. And we kind of revisit what ours looks like too. So
Are the EpiPens junior ones in the elementary school?
in the office, so I don't have those out I don't have those out in the box, but those are in the office. So during school days, those are, like if the office is open, those are there.
Do a lot of the kids that have severe allergic reactions, would they carry their own in most situations, or not necessarily?
So in theory, they do, but for those of us that know how middle school and high school students work, sometimes they it's not anywhere near 100% that they have that on them or near them. So that's why we do stock. I get stock EpiPens through a service, EpiPens for Schools. So we don't actually have to buy those. They are part of a program that we're a part of. So that's not an expense for us. But and the thing is with allergies is anyone can have an allergic reaction for the first time. So it's good to have those on hand. Last year I mentioned that we had achieved the Cardiac Safe School designation last spring. I had hoped to maybe do some celebration of that. I've got some banners and stuff, but maybe we can work on that for October is actually Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month. So maybe we can do some sort of program or some sort of recognition for that designation at that time. In student education, the puberty and hygiene in 4th, 5th, and 6th grades, those are things that I currently do. Diabetic education is more of a one-on-one with my diabetic students that just kind of a continual educating on self-cares. I have had curriculums lined up and have worked on for kindergarten hand washing and 1st grade dental health, like 7th grade first aid. And those are things that I'm kind of hoping that we'll be able to launch with having Health Aid help with some of that. And so I do think that those are things that would enrich our students as well. One thing that I think we sort of forget about is that along with our 1,600 students in our district, we also have about 300 adults working for us. And that's 300 people with various health histories and ailments, and that's 300 people that at any given time may have a health crisis that may need attention. So I'm often called in to help assess and even do some regular monitoring to help people give feedback for their providers. And sometimes I take people to the clinic in the emergency room, so so that's part of that as well. Some continuing challenges that we're facing in school nursing and the coordination with providers. This is not a challenge that's unique to our district. When I talk to other school nurses, they're also experiencing some of these challenges. We're finding that more and more providers are recommending and even sometimes writing on prescription pads for an IEP or a 504. And I think there's a little bit of misconception on what that is, and that they don't really, many of them do not understand the process and the legal process that we have to follow as a school district. And so I would like to at some point coordinate with some of our local providers to do some discussions about that and let them know what our side of this looks like too, so that we can be more clear for families too, because sometimes I feel like families get caught in the middle of that then. And then another issue has been clarification of doctor's notes that excuse attendance and restrictions, and sometimes those are very vague and can be interpreted in different ways. So trying to get those clarified and also working with the continuity of care. Some of these students are with us for 7.5 hours a day, sometimes more than that if they're in athletics or if they're on the bus for an hour. So we are taking care of these health needs, and we can only take care of what we are privy to. And so that continuity of care and helping providers understand that we do need to know a little bit of information. And the other part of that is when I try to clarify some of that clarification of doctor's notes, it's increasingly difficult to reach providers. I mean, I find that even when I try to follow up on things with my own parents or whatever, it's difficult to get through all the stops and checks in those medical facilities these days. Another challenge that we face is a lack of an athletic trainer. This is more of an us issue, somewhat because of where our district is located. We are too far away from many of those, like Gunderson, Mayo, Marshfield, some of those major medical systems. So while a lot of the Cooley Conference is covered by Gunderson athletic trainers, they will not come this far. So that's been a challenge, and it goes beyond just the coverage at events. The bigger challenge that Andy and I are finding is the management of concussions, diagnosis of and management of concussions when there's been a head injury, and then the return to play protocol and injury management. And I get it, teachers and coaches, they look to Andy and I because we used to be the ones that would help facilitate that information from the athletic trainer. And but the reality is doing all of that return to play protocol and the diagnosis and all of that, that's beyond the scope of either one of our practice. But I also understand that it's hard for those coaches to know when to let that student return. And on the academic aspect of it, I would push out a concussion care plan to the teachers so that they know what kind of academic accommodations need to be done for that student so that that student can heal and get back in all of their activities and back into academics full force sooner because they have time for their brain to heal. So that's been a challenge for us, and we're still working on navigating that. And then also coordination with families. Like I said, we only know what we know, so sometimes it's difficult when we get caught off guard. A family has not shared a particular condition with us, and then in those many hours that those students are with us, then something happens. So we would like to be able to know some things in advance so that we can be prepared. And there's also the whole aspect of supporting families as they navigate the realities of the health needs of their children, and supporting families' access to services and supplies. That's kind of a big part of it too. And sometimes those end up being situations where we put in a referral to those community health workers too, which has been helpful. So these are all the people I collaborate with in the school district with, which is pretty much everyone and at some level. This is kind of a cool graphic that I found. I feel like we school nurses kind of work behind the scenes, but I'd like to think that we have a larger scale impact on the entire community. The longer I'm in this position, the more I see the bigger picture of school nursing, and that we are not just working with the students, we're also working with the school and staff, and then that outreaches into the families and the greater community too. So, any questions?
I very much want to ask you the magic wand question. If you had a magic wand, there was no restrictions, no budget, no real world problems, what would help you do your job better? If you could have anything in the world, athletic trainer, more mental health, whatever, what would you like or need?
There would be a few things. Athletic trainer would be one. Numbers wise, we could really stand to have another full-time nurse. There would be a lot of those would kind of be the bigger things, but there would be some other things as well. But
in comparison with our peers, is it fairly typical to have only one nurse to cover this many buildings or this many students?
We're a little on the slim side, I would say.
And our high need diabetic students are
Yes.
representation is disproportionate, yes, sorry,
Yes.
I'm not saying it very well, but Elizabeth moved her office to the high school this year so that she could be closer to the students that need the daily cares.
Yeah, I did a little research into numbers on diabetics, and we are kind of in a statistical anomaly on how many type 1 diabetics we have in this district at this time. Now that may change in a few years as kids graduate and that sort of thing. But and it is outside of the norm of even other districts in the Cooley Conference. Yeah.
So, this is not for you so much as for Shelley. This is a known issue. When you don't affect things I hear from constituents, I know the first time I found out we had one nurse for all the schools, I nearly fell over. Is there any way to, is there any way to fund another nurse? And B, even if we could fund another nurse, can we get another one out here?
So the funding is the budget question, right? Referendum, for sure. Elizabeth has been asking for assistance, and to be honest, we were looking at a part-time nurse at $40,000 to $50,000 by the time we do benefits and all that. And we opted for the health aide in each building. So what we're doing is each building was asked to identify a 7.5-hour aide, and we're gonna make those people 8 hours a day. And so they are expected to have a half hour every single day to work on the numerous clerical tasks that take her time so that she can use her expertise where her expertise is needed. There's a lot of communication and monitoring and tracking and data communication, all of that stuff that we can build systems around for other people to be able to do so that her time is freed up to serve the kids. Is that ideal? No, but that's about a $9,000 answer to our previous problem, and it's valuing Elizabeth's expertise working with the students that need her the most. So.
What happens if you get hit by a bus or get sick or something happens?
Call
So
the
I hope I don't
hospital
get hit
and
by a
say
bus.
we need, or the clinic, and we say we need some medical care right now. Right, I mean, that's really what we would do, is we would call somebody and we would get the on-staff help that we need. There's districts around us who don't have a person, and they contract with the hospital, or they have an EMT on site, or they have a first responder on site, and they rely on 911. Our staff are lucky enough to get to call Elizabeth first before 911, and sometimes it's Elizabeth and 911 at the same time, and that's perfectly acceptable as well.
I think what he's saying is that if she was.
Yeah, I understand.
Wasn't there, I guess.
We would,
Yeah, if she was,
same answer, we're gonna call a medical facility and say we need help.
or if she was hit by a bus, we would.
Really like those.
I hope we call 911 if she's hit by a bus, just to be clear.
We're not calling 911 for
Let's
her.
get excited about buses.
The diabetics piece, I know you do the health talks with certain aged kids about puberty and everything else. I think with the number of the disproportionate rate that we have in the district, it would be nice to see diabetic tied in a little bit, because there are things that kids can do to help spot things going on within their peers. And the fact that as our communities are aging, diabetes seems to become part of a lot of families at home too. So if they could help spot something with their parents or grandparents or whatever, it's just me talking kind of out of nowhere, but I think that kids are they are smart enough to see things and could certainly help somebody that's having a reaction, you know.
So I will say that the idea for the 7th grade first aid talk actually came from my twins when they were in like 7th or 8th grade, and they actually have a good friend who is a type 1 diabetic, and they're like, and then a couple classmates that they know have severe allergies and carry EpiPens, and they're like, Mom, I'd really like to know what to do if so-and-so, had a crisis or, and that sort of thing. And they're like, I think you should teach, a first aid class, in middle school. And so that we know. And I think 7th grade is a great age for that, because that is kind of the age that we start leaving our kid alone a little bit longer, letting them walk up to the park, with their group of friends or whatever. And that's kind of why I identified that. We used to do a little bit of a first aid thing. I used to do something with 6th grade at like an outdoor thing, but they haven't done that for years. So that's kind of where that idea came from, because the kids were recognizing that they would like to have that knowledge. But I will tell you, if you go into a kindergarten classroom where there's a type 1 diabetic, they'll be able to tell you when that child, they're beeping again. So the kids do catch on pretty quick, and like I know my daughters were very sensitive to well, I can't bring in this for a birthday treat because so and so has a peanut allergy, or that sort of thing. So they do catch on. But yeah, that was my idea for the for doing some sort of a middle school first aid class.
Any other questions for Elizabeth?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Alright, I guess moving on to 6.1, gifts and grants.
All right, so you can see that there was a lot of very generous donations throughout the community. First, I just want to spend a moment talking about the EEF grants. That group of trustees are just a really, really neat group of individuals who come together. Thanks, guys. Who come together and just for the sole purpose of wanting our staff to feel supported in the work that they do and providing new opportunities for kids. And so they love the creativity of some of the asks, and there are several trustees that say this is how much the fund has to offer and this is how much I'm personally willing to offer because I want to support that work. And so they make a simple grant application, and it's just for Black River Falls teachers, and I just wanted you to see some of the creative ideas that are being funded through the EEF. And then we also received several gifts. Linda Nandry made a donation to our angel funds. How perfect that those funds are growing right after we had a conversation about needing to use those again. Black River Health donated $764.73 so that each one of our sports teams have individual first aid kits as they travel. So many of the coaches have like a box or bag or something that they use, but this is a fantastic, well put together resource for them. The Ho-Chunk Nation donated $500 towards the hockey program's golf fundraiser. We lost a retired educator from our community. Dave McCullough passed away, and so we received a memorial gift in honor of Dave McCullough from Jan Eccles. Dave Meyer made a donation to the Shooting Tigers, also as a memorial for Dave McCullough. And the Jackson Correctional Institute, they are so generous with the fundraising that they do out there. And this time they latched onto that Adaptive Sports League, and the individual who signs the check said, we really like this group, we think we're gonna keep them for the next couple donation periods. Excellent, so that's great that that is a group that is just really fast growing and making a big impact in the community, so it's nice to see that. So all of those gifts and grants, would appreciate your approval.
I'll move to accept the gifts and grants.
Second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Okay, next.
Handbooks.
Student handbooks, 6.2.
So hopefully you appreciated that they all did the track changes, so if it wasn't your first time looking at them, you could get the Cliff Notes version. If it was your first time, you had a little bedside reading to do for a while. If you have any questions or concerns, I can just tell you the process. We keep a running list throughout the school year of all the things that we want to make sure get denoted in that handbook. I have the attorneys look at it every once in a while to make sure there's not any areas that were missed. That's where the weapons piece came from in everyone's handbook this year. Otherwise, updating the policy numbers was really the bulk of it this year. Any questions about any specific building? Otherwise, we would look for your approval so they can be considered board policy for the year.
I motion to approve the student handbook amendments.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved. 6.3, July board meeting.
I owe the board an apology. I apologize that We parked a family vacation. I don't know what I was thinking when that got booked. We were trying to put 6 different schedules together, and it is that week. So Mr. Jar can either facilitate his very first meeting for you all in July, or we can consider moving the date. And I have learned since I put this out that there are several that are not available on the 14th. So perhaps the 28th would work. July is usually our shortest meeting of the year because there's not a lot on the core agenda. But I would greatly appreciate.
Is there anybody that knows that 28th wouldn't work for them?
I wish I'd known to check the 28th
No,
before I
sorry.
came.
I'm not sure.
I have no idea about the 28th.
July 28?
Yes.
I'm available.
But
I can be available on the 20th.
the 14th you could not, and you
Struggle
could
with the
not.
14th.
What about you on the 14th?
I'm good either day.
Okay. So.
I'm good 14.
And the 21st.
Jeez, you doesn't get to go that.
I facilitated one via Zoom. I could
I can do the
try that.
Brandon's got this.
Yeah.
It's
Trial
your
by
wishes. I
fire.
can try to zoom in.
So you got 4 for the 28th that know that they can do the 28th. Alex not sure. Caitlin not sure.
I likely can, I'm just not sure. I gotta
And we don't know Jeanette at this point.
Or you could text us,
She
you
might
know,
be back by then.
and then we find out.
I can. Usually for the monthly meetings, we like it in the minutes and stuff, but we certainly can.
Well,
I
do we have
apologize.
Yeah.
Do we have a quorum without me and Caitlin if we both think we can do the 28th but aren't
Yes.
sure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just
So
need
let's
4.
move it to the 28th and we'll at least have a quorum
I got a motion
between
there.
the two of us.
I'll second.
Alright, all in favor of moving the July meeting?
You're putting Alex as the motion? As he said it? Yes?
Sure, I will make a motion to move it to the 28th.
And I would second that motion.
Okay.
Alright, all in favor of moving the July monthly meeting to the 28th? Signify by saying aye.
I,
All
I feel-
opposed? Approved.
I apologize for that.
If I can't make it, then I get
Are you going to Cancun? We get souvenirs.
I am going to Cancun, and now our meeting is after that, so yes, you'll be, your packet's gonna be out really early. It's gonna be out the week in advance.
Employment recommendations, I guess talking about employment,
Oh, now you're gonna do it.
I'm going there. Talking about the school bus lady, this is her last meeting. Retiring her employment, so we're gonna miss her and thank her for her last, how long did you work here?
Here, 29 plus years, but over
We'll just
30
call
in
it 30.
education.
Yeah.
33 in education, right?
Yeah, well, 32.
Nice.
So I just wanted to recognize Jill, and she's already had retirement from the district at the spring banquet and all those things. But honestly, she is incredibly well respected, not only in our community for the work she does, but around the state. In her professional organization, WASPO, she has mentored so many new school business officials, most recently Brandon Jar. And she just has been an incredible asset when you consider the amount of facilities work that's happened in this district over the last 10 years. Every single building has been touched by significant projects, and she keeps track of all of that and the bonding and the just so much heavy lifting over the last years, and she's been now an amazing partner to do this work with. So congratulations, and I'm sure we are more sad that it's your last meeting than you are.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the financial part of this district is definitely one of the strengths, and Brandon, just keep the wheels from falling off the bus. Okay?
Another bus analogy.
I should have brought my
Just
buses.
one bus though.
Really 0 buses.
Keep the lug nuts tight or something there. Right?
Thanks, Jill.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the employment
all?
recommendations.
I'll second it.
Alright, all in favor of the employment recommendations, signify by saying aye.
I,
All opposed? Approved.
We were so excited to have secured a middle school tech ed teacher because those are such tough positions. And on Friday, we had a resignation of a high school tech ed teacher. So we're back to the drawing board when it comes to tech. The high school got a job in his very close to his hometown. So he coaches 3 different seasons for us, and just as well excited for him to get to go home, but we're disappointed to lose him. Just too bad.
Okay, next up is 8.1 student success report.
Excellent.
School improvement plan outcomes.
So all the principals are gonna share with you the outcomes of their continuous improvement plans from the year. So take it away, principals.
We're all going at once.
All right, so I'm going to get started. My name is Christina Kirshner. I'm the principal at Forest Street. And we're going to talk a little bit about our forestry little tigers and some of the goals we worked for this year. We'll start with our reading goals. For 4K, we set the goal that 80% of our 4K students will be able to produce 10 letter sounds by the end of the year. And for our kindergarten and first grade students, it was 70%. The students' composite scores on the Ames Web Plus assessment would achieve benchmark or above. Moving over to math, again, our 4K math goal was at 80% of our students will identify numbers 1 to 10, and then also match a quantity that represents each number. And for our kindergarten and first graders, it was 65% of students will score at or above grade level on our iReady diagnostic. For our climate goal this year, we chose to focus on attendance. And so our goal was to decrease our chronic absenteeism from 31% to 25%. So these are some of the action steps that we put in place this year to meet our goals. For math, 4K finished their first full year of a full-time program. And so by doing that, they were able to implement daily math instruction each day as opposed to every other day, which is how their math instruction went with a part-time program. Kindergarten started year 2 of their new math curriculum, which is Bridges, and our teachers felt more comfortable and efficient in implementing that curriculum now that it was year 2. And for first grade, we talked a lot about strengthening our PLC practices and really focusing on those math strategies that were successful in the classroom and sharing them amongst their teams so that other teachers could also use them in their classrooms. For reading, again, because 4K was a full-time program, they were able to add on another piece of our Haggerty curriculum. So initially as a part-time program, they were able to get through the early pre-kindergarten curriculum, and now at full-time they thought that they could get through that program by January and then add on the next piece of that curriculum, which was the pre-kindergarten Haggerty curriculum. Kindergarten implemented a data wall this year, so they created a Google Sheet with all of the kindergartners listed in there with different skills, such as the letter sounds and nonsense word fluency. And every 4 weeks, they did a quick check-in assessment with student growth towards their goals, and they recorded that information in their data wall. And during their PLC times then, that they would have conversation around the students' growth and progress. First grade started using fluency folders earlier this year as opposed to years past. The goal was to start using them in November. And the idea with the fluency folders was to give students practice reading up to 51 words per minute, which is the goal by the end of first grade. And the last action step for reading was that our teachers would use the Orton-Gillingham strategies, such as the 3 that you see listed there, and those are research-backed strategies that prove that it helps students make new pathways in their brain to learning how to read. For our climate action steps, at Student Success Conferences in November, we had student, staff, and their families sign a compact that talked about positive student, family, and staff, I don't really want to say behaviors, but actions that lead to a successful school year, such as getting to school on time, having good routines at home as far as bedtimes, reading to kids at home. So going through those things with families, they signed the compact saying that they agreed and they understood that those are benefits to kids. We had a monthly collaboration with our offsite at Forest Street. The goal was to have a monthly collaboration, and I believe we were able to do every other month this year, just because of the different timing and schedules from all of those different staff trying to get together. And teachers will complete the attendance check-ins with students and families. So the idea is that if students were gone for 2 or more days in the same week, we ask teachers to give a call or reach out to those families to see if we could be of any assistance in helping get those students to school. And there's one on the bottom about student engagement. So we talked about putting a bulletin board in our entryway for families to see that listed out activities that were happening within the building as well as our attendance information. And we did not get a bulletin board out front, but we did add, thank you, we did add that information onto our screen in the office. So when families came into our office, they could see our attendance information scrolling on the screen. So this is how our year ended. For our reading data, our 4K, the goal was 80% at the beginning of the year, and we ended with 76% of our 4K, being able to produce 10-letter sounds or more. For our kindergarten, the goal was 70%, and 60% of students' composite scores were at or above grade level, according to AimsWeb. And for our first grade students, again, it was 70%, and we ended with 63% of first graders' composite scores being at or above grade level. For math then, again, 4K's initial goal was 80%, and they ended the year at 77, being able to identify 1 to 10 and match a quantity. For kindergarten, 68% was our ending percentage, and the beginning was 65. So kindergarten was able to meet and slightly exceed their end of the year goal. And for first grade, again, it was 65% at the beginning, and they ended with 51%. For our attendance then, we started at 31% in the fall, and we were able to end this school year at 23% of students chronically absent. So our goal was 25, and we met that, and were able to do a little bit better.
Would you happen to have a breakdown by grade level on the absenteeism? I'm just curious if it correlates with like first grade having lower scores, meaning they had higher absenteeism.
So that is definitely something I could look up. I don't have offhand right now.
Okay, that's fine. Just
Next
curious.
pass would have that, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Any other questions for Forest Street?
All right. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Rachel Gamera, in case you didn't know that. I'm transitioning from assistant principal at Red Creek Elementary to principal. Reading goals this year. We set some pretty lofty goals this year. We've never set them this high before, so it's always fun to see when teachers are able to push themselves and their students and see how far they can go. So in reading, our first goal was that 70% of students would meet their typical growth goal in the iReady reading screener. So typical growth would be showing like 1 year's growth. From wherever they tested, they would make a year's growth. The stretch growth would be a 1.5 years growth. 35% of students would reach that, and 60% of the students would be at or above grade level. As you look at math, you'll see that those numbers follow the same. So same goals for math, except for obviously the math screener. And then our climate goal, we focused on behavior, and our goal was to reduce minor behavior office referrals. So those are those minor write-ups. We would reduce the number that we had this year by 20% compared to last year. All right, so some of the action steps that we took. Again, reading and math would be very similar. It's similar work, however, math was a greater focus for us this year as far as unpacking standards, selecting guarantees, we looked at heat maps. Each grade level did a lot of work. We would take some half days to really dig into the curriculum and determine what guarantees we wanted to use and do some backward planning around assessments, unit planning, and all of that. This year, that's going to be our reading focus. But we implemented in reading new curriculum. We used Wonders and CKLA Knowledge. In second grade, Wonders was 3rd through 5th grade, so that was new for us. We had a lot of positive feedback from teachers. They really enjoyed the new curriculum. Again, a lot of unit planning was happening, progress monitoring students, collecting data and using that for their small group instruction. We were also really focused on fluency this past year. We did fluency folders as well. They were used in the classroom, but also we had a lot of home engagement this year where we encouraged families to also work on fluency with their students at home, which we hadn't done before. And then obviously assessing our students. And for climate, so we conducted 3 surveys of the students throughout the year, just to gauge how the students were feeling climate-wise within the building. Do they feel like they are accepted? Can they go to the adults? Do they understand what behavior expectations are in the building? What is their favorite part of the day, least favorite part of the day, all of those questions. So we did that 3 times throughout the year. Also to help with behavior, we did some staff calibration at the beginning of the school year. So everybody had clear expectations as to what the behaviors were expected within the building. We also sent all that information home with students, and we reteach those expectations to the students a couple times throughout the year as well. So we do stations and other ways of reteaching those expectations for students. And then we also offered some extra support for special education students with behavior goals this year. So we think that that had an impact on the number of behavior write-ups that we would see for those students. They just had some extra supports that we didn't have in place before. So we think that that was a benefit and a help for them as well. All right, so now looking at our data. So again, reading, typical growth, our goal was 70%, and we reached 63% of our students met typical growth. Stretch growth, we had 35 as our goal, and we were at 32%. And then at or above grade level, 60% was the goal, and 64 was where we ended. And then in math, you can see typical growth, again, the goal was 70, and we reached 57%. Stretch growth, 35 was the goal, and we ended with 25%. And on grade level, the goal was 60, and we ended at 53. So now I know we didn't necessarily reach our goals, but like I said at the beginning, we set very lofty goals. We have never set goals this high before. And when we started digging into the data and we compared to years prior, this is the highest achievement or highest numbers that any grade level has ever had. So when we really broke it down by every grade level, and we looked at the numbers, we compared it to last year, every single grade level went up in every single area from last year. So I think that's worth celebrating. Second grade met every goal as well. Third grade had met a few as well. So there's a lot. I know it doesn't always feel great to not reach the goal. However, there was a lot to celebrate, which I thought was great.
And to be honest, there was a time that people kept, a refrain was that 1 of every 3 children is achieving, and over 50% are at or above grade level, right?
Right.
So that's definitely forward progress.
Absolutely. And then for culture and climate, so the minor office write-ups that we had last year was 2,631. And this year we had 1,954, which was a reduction of 25.74%, which was exciting. And then we often get the question, okay, did that impact the major behaviors? Because that was the ultimate goal. We're addressing the minor behaviors to impact majors. And we had a reduction in our major behaviors by 34.19% compared to last year, which I thought was great too.
And that might have had an impact on the academic outcomes as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any questions?
This is I'm not trying to sound cynical, but I always sound cynical, so it's okay to sound cynical, I'm not being cynical.
Yeah.
You set an ambitious goal of reducing how many kids are sent to the office for minor infractions, and you achieved it after a staff calibration where you set new expectations for the staff. In any way, was the expectation lower, or did you change how aggressively you would pursue negative behavior? Was there any sort of push to maybe let stuff slide that was not let slide in the past to get that number down?
Great question. So when we calibrated, it was not a lowering of any of the expectations. Honestly, I feel like it was the opposite of that. And so it was just getting everybody on the same page as to what is considered a minor, what is considered a major, what are the expectations that we have in the building, how are we going to address them. It was just basically getting everybody back on the same page. We didn't change our expectations by any means. Other people had asked too, like, oh, well, maybe staff are writing up less minors and that's affecting. But that holds true for every single year, and I can honestly say that I don't think any staff member was saying, ooh, I'm not gonna write this incident down because it might change our numbers. I don't think that was ever in anybody's mind. I think it was business as usual throughout the year, and the numbers just ended up the way they are for some of those other factors, but that's a great question.
Any other questions for Red Creek?
Just a comment, not a question. This is a very good achievement in mathematics data. 60% was goal. You folks have reached 53%. It's very close to a goal. Similarly, in a reading data, 60% was goal, 54% achieved. Very close to the target. I'm really pleased to see this.
Right. And if you look at, so like the 54%, actually it was split like 26%. So we're at grade level and 26% were above grade level, at or above. So I mean, you look at that and it feels like, oh, they were on grade level, but actually half of them were actually beyond grade level, which is exciting too, and you don't see that here. Great. Thank you.
Good evening, Dan Nortman Middle School. Our reading goals and our math goals were much similar, much like Red Creek's. By the end of the 24-25 school year, we're going to increase the percentage of students scoring at proficiency by 10% from fall to spring. And additionally, we had 70% of our students who reached their individual growth goals. And then our climate goal was to increase the number of students that are at school 90% of the time by 10% and increase the total number of major behavioral write-ups by 10% compared to last year as well. Our action steps, math and reading, were very much similar. We will continue to implement and a guaranteed and viable curriculum. We embraced an ongoing assessments process that included frequent team development. We just worked really hard to create common form assessments, our units. We had assessment plans. When are we going to do them? When are we going to do the reteaching? When are we going to do the retesting? And then making sure that we were at rigor with our assessments. In the past, we had broke our assessments apart, broke them down so they were smaller sections of assessments instead of testing to the full rigor, which gave us a false sense of security when they were doing pretty well. But once we upped the rigor to the content, then our scores start going down. So we really upped the rigor of our assessments and worked really hard to prepare our students for that. So that's basically the first part. We continue to do deep dives in iReady. Comparing historical data from Red Creek, we feel good when we can see improvements from middle school. We understand when they come from Red Creek to the middle school, we've been seeing a decline. So we're really attempting to battle that. And then utilize goal tracking sheets for our students. We are setting goals with our students after the fall, and then looking at our results and saying, where can we do better? What are we going to do better? And we set goals to do better. So after our fall, we start this, and then we have meetings with our students before the winter, and then after the winter, and then before spring, and then again after spring, and just talk about what we did, how we did it, what could we do better, and celebrate when we do better. And that's held with every single student in math and ELA with classroom teachers. We also had MAPE and CT, social studies, science teachers create goals for EE that related to math and ELA. We wanted them to be a part of the process, whether it was reading for information, working in the math, but everybody was working with math and ELA to help us with these goals that we set. Culture and climate, PBS implementation. We again did our expectations, rotations where we taught every classroom, every area like classroom, bathroom, hallway, commons, PE, so forth and so on. So all the students knew exactly what expectations were at the middle school. We also listed the expectations in those areas, in the hallways, in the bathrooms, in the classrooms, so forth and so on. And then related to, look back at them when we needed to, and retaught the expectations when we needed to. This year we started doing monthly PBIS pep rallies to celebrate some of the good things that the students were doing. This is also a time where we had our clubs demonstrate what they did in their club. They talked about what they're doing, how much fun it was, so forth and so on. Try to get more students involved and just share some of the cool work that we're doing. We also, I forgot about this part, listed and displayed expectations to the school. Part of that also was we put percentages about how many students were reaching the goals that we were setting. Our goal is 80% of the students meet expectations, so that one or less major write-ups in a month. So we shared 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And we also put up some posters about our attendance as well for our chronically absent students. And then we created a system to recognize staff and student achievement, and we just did that at our pep assemblies and our monthly staff meetings. So results, in fall, 6th grade at 23%, 7th 30%, you can see the goals up there. In the end, we did increase in 7th and 8th grade, 11 and 13%, we didn't quite make it in 6th grade. And then the growth goal, we wanted 70% of we wanted to increase by 10%, 45, 55, and 63, so we didn't quite meet those goals. We're gonna continue to set large goals to try to increase. It's disheartening when we don't make the goals, but if we lessen the goals and make them less challenging, I don't think we're gonna grow the way we need to grow. So math, same idea. We met in all 3 grade levels for the proficiency level, but the growth goal we did not meet. Again, with 46, 60, and 64%. And very disappointing, but our attendance decreased by 2%. We're not positive what we're doing with that. What has worked for us in the past did not work this year. Meeting with students individually, so forth and so on. So next year we're going to set more rigorous meetings with students and really attack that part of it. And then our major behavior referrals, we increased a great deal as well. And if you ask the question, did we change our expectations? No, because this is the second year we've done PBIS. We just really try to buckle down and hold our students to the expectations that were shared. And that's the results, unfortunately. So we have work to do with the middle school, there's no doubt. Academically, behaviorally, and with our chronic absenteeism, but we're up for the challenge.
How many approximate students are in middle school?
315, 320.
315. I'm just trying to do the math on number of major behavioral referrals per capita.
Yeah, we have one grade level that had the majority. 2 of the grade levels would have met the goal. 1 grade level did not meet the goal that really.
I would add to that too that you often think of per capita, but many times it's a small amount of students, but they a lot that come from.
According to the data, I guess it'd be 6th grade, but I could be wrong.
You are. You are wrong.
You are.
I am?
You are.
Well, I'm just saying, if you look at the data, it would look like.
Yeah.
Academic achievement and behavior don't always go hand in hand. Any other questions for Dan?
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Hi everyone. So the high school, we set English and math goals around our pre-ACT and ACT data. Those scores have been historically low for our students, and we wanted to try to see if we could increase those. So we wanted each student between the fall and the spring, or winter to spring, depending on the grade level, and we can talk about that in a second, to gain 2 points between the fall and spring in both the math and English. That was a pretty also big goal. On average, students gain 1.5 points in a year, right? And so we were asking them to do that in a shorter amount of time, but we really believe that we could do that. And so that was really our goal. The reason I say some it was winter to spring, our freshmen and sophomores took the actual ACT in our program called Chalk Talk in the fall. And then we didn't think it would be fair to base their score growth off of an actual ACT into a pre-ACT. So in the winter, they took the actual pre-ACT, and then we did their growth from that winter to spring.
All right, and then we had a culture climate goal. So we identified in-school skippers as something we want to attack this year. And for those that are probably wondering what an in-school skipper is, we struggled last year, and I would say previous years, with students being at school but not being in classes. And so we were trying to attack that this year. So if you take a look, the first 18 weeks, we were going to try to decrease it by 50% in the last 18 weeks. So we were just looking at our data this school year and trying to reduce those in-school skippers.
And our original goal for this had us comparing last year to this year, but we did a lot of changing in how we were coding things within Skyward. So we needed to switch it to just focus on this year so that we had accurate comparable data. So we did a bunch of things. English implemented new curriculum this year, so that first year really digging in, and they stuck to it to fidelity. They were doing it and doing all the things. We bought into this Chalk Talk program that really had students during advising, practicing ACT-style questions, because a lot of what the ACT is really knowing how to take the test. There are specific questions that don't normally show up on assessments we're giving, the style of questioning. We gave those practice tests in fall and winter and spring, which we have never been able to do growth data since I have been here and for years, right, in the high school. So it was the first year we could see growth from fall to spring. We had students talking about their ACT scores and setting goals. So in their advising, they talked about each of their ACT scores or pre-ACT scores at that time and really set goals about what they were going to do in their classes to increase those scores. We spent a lot of time in staff meetings analyzing that test data, looking at the gaps, looking at what types of questions maybe our students needed to know more about. We also made a universal writing rubric, which basically had like a checklist of things that if a student turned in any class an assignment that was writing, and it didn't have this checklist like capital letters and punctuation and correct grammar, that we were just going to give it back to them and say, try again, right? This doesn't meet our expectations of a writing rubric. And so that really upped that rigor. And to go back to our new curriculum, we also spent a lot of time aligning that new curriculum with the ACT standards, right? And so really focusing on how our classroom instruction is guided and working with the ACT, so it all kind of flowed together. In math, we started a new curriculum last November, so this is year 1.5 of them using that new math curriculum, and it really takes some time to dig into that math curriculum, and so we're seeing some of those improvements in it. Again, we used Chalk Talks, we gave those practice tests, and more of that talking and analyzing that data.
For the climate goal, so some of the action steps we put in place when we are continuing to talk about is increasing classroom expectations. One of the things that we've identified is a potential cause for some of our students not being in class is the disengagement that's happening in that class. We really want our students to value their time in that classroom. And so we talked a lot about that throughout the year, consistently documenting skippers and having those conversations with those students the next day when you see when teachers were addressing those kids the next day, having those conversations with them. I think a really big one for us this year that helped with our culture and climate is the phones off and away in spaces during instructional time. We have work to do on it still, but I was impressed with our staff. It's not an easy thing to hold students to, but they throughout the year, I thought we did a really good job of consistently holding an expectation for students And then when we are seeing students in the hallway, one thing that we talked a lot about is making sure to address those students. If they are not your student, you are still, if you see somebody in the hallway, asking them where they're supposed to be, and with that accountability piece. So we continue to, I would say all staff members, janitorial staff, support staff, teachers, Kim and I continue to have those conversations with students in the hallway.
So,
Where do they go?
sit in the bathroom, like oftentimes just sit on the floor. Yes, I have the same reaction as that. I'm like, that's gross. Sit on the floor. They will sometimes find a different classroom and sit in there and just kind of hide. But mostly it's the bathrooms. So here's our data. We didn't meet our goal in all areas. I put on there, even though it wasn't our goal, our average ACT score for English and math during those times. Again, remember for the 9th and 10th graders in the fall, they took an ACT, right? So when you see a 9, remember they took an ACT. We did meet our goal for 11th graders in English. 82% of our students in English in 11th grade grew by those 2 points, which is outstanding. But then you can see our other numbers there that met the goal. The thing that I am most excited about, even though we didn't meet our goal, is the amount that students are actually talking and engaging in the conversation about the ACT and wanting to know about their scores. So the amount of students that came up to me and were like, oh, when are we going to get our scores back? I want to know how we did. Or engaging in that process of using Chalk Talk. Is a culture shift, right? Like our kids are actually wanting to do well, understanding that it's important, and trying to take the steps to do that. And I think with that culture shift, we're going to start seeing some more increased scores as well. And so to me, that's the most exciting part.
With the ACT stuff, has this driven any of the students to go on to secondary education that you wouldn't have expected to have happen?
Not yet am I seeing that. I think right now the colleges aren't taking it, like you don't need an ACT to get admitted. That doesn't start till 2027 right now that they're going to start taking the ACT again into consideration. So that's some of the battle is this test doesn't mean anything to our high schoolers anymore. But typically it's the same students that I knew were going to go that are going. And remember, they take it as juniors, and then they're applying to college as seniors. So I think we might see more as they see those scores improve their junior year, start thinking about it their senior year. But we haven't seen it yet.
And then for the climate goal, we had 284 skippers in the first 18 weeks. And then we got that down to 182. We did not meet our goal, right? We were, again, 50% is what we were trying to do. It did decrease by about 100, which is positive, but not quite our goal. And I would say if you were walking around our building from even last year to this year, I think it is noticeable. Students are in classrooms, and so I think we took a really positive step in talking to our staff. There's just a lot of buy-in about this and the importance of this as kind of a first step to continue to boost our academic achievement. So I think we're heading in the right direction. More work to do.
So again, the per capita question, that 182 skippers could be 50 kids repeated.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's like total number of
Incidences, yeah.
instances. Yep. So that's how that's.
Any questions for the high school?
Can you produce the numbers of like if they're like which kids they are? Like not to us, but for yourselves.
Yep. They know who they are.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Nate has put together some little call this accountability group perhaps, but found some adults for some of our frequently absent kids that they check in with and set goals together and all that stuff. So they are very aware of who the people are. Yes.
What are the repercussions for skipping school and still being there?
Wait, ask that again.
What happens?
As far like if a student is supposed to be in class and they're not there, I would say probably a pretty typical response would be a detention. I wouldn't say every single one, but that is
And then it's progressive, right? Like if it continues, like there's some in-school suspension, even though they're out of class, right? But then we can get to the point where it's a simple truancy ticket if they continue to refuse
Tiger Pass
to do a class
eligibility,
and they're
for
not
sure.
eligible for Tiger Pass.
And hopefully consequences at home that also communicate their parents' disapproval of their child skipping class.
Too much of the woodshed or something.
I did not say that.
Well, it'd be like stacking wood though. Not.
I'm
What you were
simply saying some consequences from home would be.
I mean, and it's just, I'm gonna make a comment here, I mean, obviously your high school is that time of life where you are preparing people to be contributing, you know, citizens at some point, right? And so when I look at the data and what you guys are measuring those kids to, I can't look at this and say whether or not we're impacting the community with positive people coming out, okay?
Yep.
I think next year when you set your goals, try to find some stuff that would maybe highlight the good things that are happening to do that. I mean, I think it's astronomical the amount of college credits that the senior class went with, but yet there's like no report card, okay, for how your teachers are doing or how your staff is doing right now that's based along that type of thing. And I think find some stuff that really draws to the positive impact that is happening, because I think there has been a step change in the high school. But if you looked at this data, I think it would be hard to see it, okay? So that's just the only thing that I would recommend.
I'm curious why you feel that way differently from the high school to the other schools. Is it the closeness of their students to being adults?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
because we've taken
Like-
this stance of
Yep.
let's show our students progression on the same measures all the way through our system, and you're asking for an alternate pathway of sharing that information that
Yeah.
wouldn't align with what came before, but what leads them to what comes next.
And I think like, so our goals we're setting to help with academic achievement, right? And so when you look at some of ours for next year, you'll see that. I think we highlight those things in other ways, right? Our CTE department has a whole checklist of employability skills, right, that we are checking kids on. We have a citizenship grade for each kid in every single class, right, if they're responsible, respectful, right, that each teacher goes over with them. There's just things like, I guess, that we don't bring for this report, and we could think of about a way to do that for you, but we definitely do talk about that career aspect and those things that are awesome about the high school
I'm
too.
more concerned about the outward facingness to the community than I am about like what, and I know the school board is kind of the avenue for you guys to show that, but, and through like the newsletters and all that other stuff, but I mean, I think, I do think it's okay to have two different things, Shelley, just because it's so different stages of life, right? I mean, and like,
And I don't think you'd have to
So-
totally abandon this one.
No,
You
I'm
can
not
add
saying- I'm
that
not
and
saying
then
that,
just
it's
kind
just,
of
like,
robustly.
there just wasn't as much, I think there's a lot of great stuff that's happened, and I think that looking at this, it's hard to see that. It's hard to see that.
Absolutely.
Or maybe like, take how many Fs were handed out this year and reduce that next year or something.
Got it all.
Well, that's,
I can show that to you in February or in
So-
July. Like I have all of that. So
This report was a result of their school improvement plans, which you guys all saw last August. And so they told you what they were gonna work on. These are our goals. They said, this is what we're gonna do. And now they came back to you and said, this is what we said we were gonna do, this is what we did, and here's the results of that. Throughout the year, I agree there's 8,000 other things. I would ask the board to consider how you'd like to know about so many of those other things. Because school improvement planning, to be honest, the high school is the building that the government is telling us we must do this prescribed school improvement planning for. And so this is exactly what we were told we had to do. And so how can we talk about that more? I was just thinking that we used to have board meetings. Now this one's getting a little long, but when we had more succinct board meetings, every single meeting, the principals would highlight something that happened in their buildings. And perhaps since there's so many new people sitting at the board table, maybe you would like to go back to that, where each month, each principal just quickly whips through, not a presentation, but just highlights some great things that have happened in their building so that you get to hear that stuff on a more regular basis and maybe it feels more authentic as opposed to piled up to the end of the year, right? Because those are things that happen throughout the whole year as opposed to at one time. So I'm just wondering about how you can know more of those things on a regular basis.
I feel like as a board, we stay pretty in tune because we all also, or a lot of us have like other doings and are in the schools and interact. I think for when you start looking at numbers, the black and white and the ability to take those and just kind of run with them in other ways isn't necessarily a concern you have for us as a board, but as a community, we just want to be communicating that and being that this is so like finite and available, I'm with Casey, I think it doesn't illustrate stuff that is important to be able to have when you're looking at data and it's public.
I guess I'm just kind of more building towards that August stuff, Shelley, is that's what I'm making the comment now, is like, I think we probably should rethink like
We have to measure these things.
Yeah, but there's
and
more
we
things
can
that you can
augment with
still,
other things,
yeah, there's
right?
more things that you can still communicate with this that would be
I'm happy to talk less in July if you'd like me to.
Exactly.
I mean, inherently, the proof is in the pudding from the DPI data next year. Like, we're going to see, because we can set goals that we meet. We can set stupid goals, and we can meet them. They set high goals, they got close. I like that. I'm sure there's a science to, if you set the goal too high, does it lower morale? This seems fine. The key is, rather than say, oh, this looks bad because nobody met their goal and that doesn't hit the public face, what the public's going to care about is going to be that DPI data that shows up in there's that day when everybody pulls out their phone and bing, 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 everyone in town looks at it. And, but do you feel the goals you set helped?
Absolutely, right? Our teachers were engaged with the process. They felt strong about helping students meet their goals. They talked with them during advising. Our teachers really looked at their curriculum and their data and made sure the standards were aligned. The high school staff did a ton of work in the last year and a half to increase our expectations and the rigor in our classrooms. And the students are feeling it too.
This is ACT score, American College Testing.
Correct.
And this test is a time pressure test.
It is.
Apart from IEP and 504, we give them extra time.
Yep.
But ACT score is exempt by 16 UW system. It is not required anymore. Why
required by the
are you
state.
worried about?
It's required by the state. It's part of the Wisconsin school assessment system, so our accountability system. So
if we apply UW Stevens Point, they would like to see ACT score?
I'm not talking about each individual student applying to a college. The state of Wisconsin, for our DPI accountability report cards, requires that we give the ACT.
Yeah.
Okay. What does it mean to our students?
Yeah, when they go UW La Crosse, UW Stevens Point, UW Eau Claire, EC, they don't need this time pressure test. I took this test. I would say someday we will meet in person. It requires a technique. There are many bigger questions, just skip, just go to the small one.
Yep, and
because of the time pressure.
That's what we tried to do with Chalk Talk, right? Because it really is about how to take the test, right?
Yeah.
And to like how to eliminate questions and do all that. It's a test-taking skill.
Yeah.
And to have the stamina to make it through the 4 hours of testing, right? So there is skill and not knowledge in some of that
I
test,
agree
right?
with you.
I
agree with you. Yeah.
We're definitely working on that by using some of that Chalk Talk to have simple sample questions.
What is this Chalk and Talk? What is
It's a program that has Chalk Talk lessons and practice tests that kids could do. So like we had one student that had the highest percentage of Chalk Talk lessons done, and he raised his score from a 23 to a 32. Right? So like there is data showing that practice on how to do the questions is definitely helpful in making sure that students can do it. The teachers that taught the most lessons had the most growth in their advising class. Because it's a little bit about the knowledge and a lot about how to take that test.
Yes. And also this is mandatory for the 11th grade. And the 10th grade and 9th grade, they are getting for free.
It's mandatory, they have to take the pre-ACT for the state.
Yes.
Yep, so.
And how much one SAT test cost? $20?
I don't know that number right now, right? Like, I don't know how much it costs per student.
Maybe it is free for our student.
It's free for our high school students when we take it on that April day.
Yeah.
And anything that we're doing in the
Yeah.
school, I don't know what it is. If
Yeah,
you want to
I
take it
don't
on
know, but if any student take it privately somewhere else,
Yep.
they have to pay.
Correct.
Online, I think so $20 or something.
I think it's by bigger than that right now, but I don't know.
Yeah, so that's good. Thanks.
Any other questions for the high school? All right, there was questions earlier about chronic absenteeism. If you want, I can just quickly show you the breakdown by grade level, just so that you can see that. I grab the quick. We've talked about our arc of attendance. So lots up here, let me just show you what we're looking at. This is the 24-25 school year, all students. And it is telling us that 43.2% had, the scale is right down here, 95 to 100%. The state of Wisconsin considers you chronically absent if you're missed more than 10%. So even though it is yellow for 90 to 94.99%, so green and yellow are both above that target, this is 80 to 89%, and this is lower than 80% attendance. So if we had, this is all students, and it breaks down by schools. You can see the high school and just look at the way the students align. As always, Red Creek is our strongest. 83.8% of the students are not at risk of being chronically absent, and then you can see that change. This is our new data system. This is NextPath. It immediately tells you our attendance trends. 74.2% are not at risk, however 25.8% are chronically absent. This trend is down since 2024 when we last looked at it. It tells you our average attendance, and it does a little bit of analysis for us and even goes into disproportionality. It says students not in the majority race, non-white students are 74% at target compared to 81% for our white students. This is each of the individual grade levels. So starting at pre-K, 4K, kindergarten, and we go all the way up. The strongest rate is 4th grade. Then we move, these three are the middle school grades, and you can see 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th as we move through. It also does it by gender, and finally at the bottom by race. So we just were talking to the NextPath people today. Unfortunately, we can't pick a date in time and say what was our rates as of January 21st, but this is real time whenever you open it up, it will tell you the real time attendance rate. So now this is closed for the school year. So we're at.
Could you scroll down a second?
The
that's Native
red
Hawaiian
is because the
Pacific
sample size is
okay.
less than 20 students.
No,
So
got it.
it's to protect individual students. Yeah. So we were at 74.2% that were not at risk of being chronically absent for this year. We can quickly go back to last year, 23-24. And last year we were at 75.5 by the end of the year. And so unfortunately we lost a little bit of ground overall, whereas we heard several different, I bet the 12th grade is skewing it. That's right, they're skewing it, sorry. But anyway, this is, we used to have to do all kinds of funky things to tabulate this. This chart from NextPath is really nice for the buildings to be able to put their charts and stuff up on the doorways so that parents can see where they're trending for chronic absenteeism. There's a bunch of other things in there, but that is the measure that we keep talking about, is the percent chronically absent.
So we still need more buy-in from our parents.
Sure do. We should still need that to be better. And the importance of attendance, talking about life skills, right? Okay, that was all the information on the school improvement plans.
Thank you.
So each year in June, we do have the virtual school report. I'm not gonna go through and read this whole presentation for you, but just kind of go through and give you some highlights. So, one thing to know that some of the work that we do at the high school is that there's two real programs around virtual school. We have students who can take classes, individual classes after their sophomore year that's aligned to their college and career goals and their interests, college and career readiness work. And they can take those classes through our WVS system. So Wisconsin Virtual School, among others, but Wisconsin Virtual School is the system we use primarily because there is a Wisconsin licensed teacher who teaches those courses.
Are they asynchronous or?
They are asynchronous, yes. And then the other piece to that is that we have some students, at rare circumstances, may not be able to attend school in person, so they're at home full time. Usually it's due to either a physical or mental health type of reason, and the administration works really hard to keep those students going, and so that would be a full-time virtual student. So, so I was talking through that. So then what you're seeing here then in the next slides are the courses, the wide array of courses that students can take by trimester. So these are all the part-time students and the number of semesters. So one challenge that students have is that this is all of these courses are on a semester system, and we're on trimesters. So that student has to really commit to getting it done in their trimester whole to get that whole half credit accomplished.
So is this 22, 23? There's been no changes?
Oh. It should say 20, it should be 24, 25. So I apologize.
No worries.
And those are just kind of what we talked about. So that was primarily for the high school. We had one student, the one student for middle school was full-time virtual as well, for the same reasons. And those are the totals. And then these are the different vendors that we work with. I talked briefly about Wisconsin Virtual School. We use Admentum primarily in summer school programming. And then there's specific reasons where we go into those other vendors.
Well, did you talk about, you said there was two reasons that they take virtual classes, but then you did show a few full-time students. So when we have a student who open enrolls out of our district and wants to go, and they say that they want to go virtual to another system, I usually ask the principals to please call that family and just talk to them and see if they are aware that we could provide full-time virtual education. Sometimes that is a family that the student has already tried a singular class and was not successful being an at-home learner, and we just say we're not going to pay for a slot for you in 5 different classes when you weren't able to be successful in one. And if they still choose to open and roll out, we say best of luck to you. We hope that you are successful, but if they haven't tried a virtual class for us, sometimes we convince the student to try to do part-time here and then part-time virtual with us first, as opposed to open enrolling out to someplace else, because the virtual schools in the state really draw an awful lot of kids from a lot of different communities, because they don't want to have to get up and physically go to school each day, and they think it's going to be easier. Virtual schools will sometimes then send us a letter saying your student is no longer eligible to attend because they have not engaged online for X number of days, whatever their rules are, and then the student comes back to us and they don't want to come and they don't want to do virtual and they don't want any of those things, but they are back being our student. So I just want to explain that we use those programs to try to be flexible with families so that they don't feel like their only option if they want to go virtual is to leave us. But because we're not a virtual charter school, we can't take open enrollment from other schools to us to take virtual classes. We would have to set up a whole virtual charter school for that. So We do have a few kids that go full-time, and we've reached out to them instead of them leaving. Otherwise, it's mostly a balance of they are sometimes in the school and then sometimes take virtual classes to augment their course offerings. So. All right, does anyone have questions about any of the virtual classes? You want talk a little bit about the role of who does Mark Racina?
Yep, Mark Corcovina, his role is to work with students and get them enrolled in those classes. He works closely with the counseling office and to ensure that those classes are in line with their college and career plans.
These aren't AP courses, they don't get college credit for these? Or
Some of them are, so some on that list,
yeah.
yeah, some of them on that list are AP classes, and so that's a nice option for those AP classes that aren't available for.
Or you might have seen AP biology on there, like if a kid can't really fit that into their class, we'll talk about doing it at WBS because their schedule, like they're a band and choir kid and that AP bio is that same hour. We'll talk about, does WBS work for you? Would you like to do that? To try to provide all the opportunities we can for students.
It's cool.
Any other questions? Great, thank you very much.
Moving on to 9.1, monthly expenditures.
Expenditures. So last board meeting, we were asked to kind of put together some graphs that shows the information a different way rather than the big spreadsheet of numbers that you normally see. This didn't make it in your board packets, but here's an example of what this can look like going forward. This is our expenditures in our 1000 series, so instruction, which is salaries and benefits mostly. And so you can see last year, this year, what has been spent, what's left to be spent. Now it's June. This is meant to be kind of a monthly type of thing. It's June and it's crunch time budget season, so it looks a little awry, but on a monthly basis it should look a little bit better. And this is broken down by percentage of the year to date, what's left to spend. This is what we have spent, this is what is remaining in that function. This is support services, same thing, last year, what is budgeted for this year, what we've spent, what's left, 90% versus 10% left to be spent before the end of the fiscal year. Non-program transactions, which are things like?
Open enrollment out is probably the biggest piece of that, and special education transfer to Fund 27. And a lot of that doesn't happen till June, till the end of, after the end of June actually. So that looks really odd that it's like 57%, 42%, but we have a lion's share of it yet to be coded, so.
And then other finance uses, same type of situation here. We also included our revenues for the different parts, but again, it's just a weird time of the year to really get an accurate picture of it. Revenue from local sources, so last year, this year, what's left to spend, what's receive, sorry. The amounts for all of these are so different, so when you generate a graph from Excel or Google Sheets like I did, like the amount that you get for in-district payments within Wisconsin is much different than the general fund, and so the graphs get a little bit off, and so that'll get better when you see it on a monthly basis, but this is kind of an example of what you'll see.
So is it committed then? Like we know those funds are for sure coming, or we're anticipating that they would happen?
For the most part, the biggest piece of the 200 sources, for example, that's local sources, you can leave it on revenue, but that's okay. Our tax levy. And so those are July tax payments. We don't actually get them to August, but we will book them. We'll do a receivable for them in June when we're all done with the fiscal year. So a lot of that stuff is known. The grants are all yet to be finally claimed in the state sources and federal sources.
Impact aid we usually get in June.
Yeah, sometimes we get more impact aid. It's really difficult. And when you're in the expenditures, we pay our people throughout the summer, and so we'll do what's called summer checks yet before the end of June. So think about that. That's a couple months worth of payrolls that we haven't done yet. 5 payrolls exactly that we need to do yet. So. it's just a little bit skewed. As you go through the year, like Brandon said, it'll look a little bit better, right? It'll be monthly amounts. I think we should still provide the written reports, so you'll be able to see all those locations. You'll be able to see the percentages and stuff by location as you've seen them before. That's up to you, if you want that or not.
I'll do the monthly report. This is for me kind of like, you know, I'd rather have the breakdown if you don't mind.
Okay. So.
And I think Jeanette, and I know she's not here, but just speaking for what she was looking for, I think this is gonna be a step forward
Helpful,
for
okay,
her.
good.
Okay. So the check run is supposed to get approved as well, right?
Yes, yeah, all
Okay,
the
so
check
we-
summaries, they
so
should
we
have been in the packet.
Do still need action on that piece.
From the ones in
In
the
the
packet.
packet.
So that's really what,
Yes.
that agenda item
Yes.
for expenditures is really that check summary and all the expenses that have been paid. So that's really what you're approving.
These reports are always there for your information, but
Yes.
those checks are what need your approval.
Correct.
And I'll move to approve.
Second.
Alright, approved and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All in favor? Right. Passes the monthly expenditures.
Fourth Street flooring. So I was hoping to have more of a timeline for you, but they haven't gotten back to us yet. We finally have come to what we think is our final solution with Nora Flooring. This is the flooring saga that has gone on for 2 years now. There are parts of, what?
I don't know, seems longer than that.
It sure does. It sure does. There are parts of that flooring that has already been laid 3 different times, and there's still gapping happening on the tile. It is called Nora Flooring. There's many hospitals, many schools. It is widely used. For some reason, we had a problem with the adhesive first, and then they thought it was not the product, it was the adhesive. So ripped it all out, put it down again, using a more expensive adhesion that they were very confident would have no problems. Just kidding, that also had problems. And then there was another section, no, the first time they said it was the install. First it was the installer, then it was the adhesion, and now we are saying we don't want any more of this product. Where I don't care what you are gonna put it down on the floor, I don't want tiles anymore. And Kent and Jill, and then Brandon is joining the conversation. I'm gonna say way at the end of the party, but Brandon is joining that conversation as well. There is a solid sheet Nora flooring that is a little bit thicker, that has 0 instances of it failing in any of the references that we've called or the people that we've talked to. There is no opportunity for it to pull away from each other because it is one solid roll, and where 2 colors are sliced together, they do a cold weld of the material so that we are not just relying on the adhesion from below. The gymnasium floor at Forest Street is not Nora Flooring, it's a different service, but it has cold weld in several spots where 2 colors meet. It is incredibly expensive, and they are, Nora's being really unwilling to own any part of this and just keep blaming everyone else. Our architect firm, Bray Architect and Marin Construction, finally just said to us, why don't you guys just sit the conversation out, we'll go talk on your behalf, and are you okay if we threaten lawsuit? And I said, yes, we've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of flooring. They have agreed that they are gonna rip all of it out, they are gonna put solid surface, which the cost would be about 1.6 what we paid for the flooring. So they have spent so much money on the flooring at Forest Street, and it's all coming out and the solid surface is going in. So our problem now is timing, because the product comes from Germany. They are not sure that they are gonna be able to make it this summer. So we are waiting on timeline. Because they have to rip it out and then put it down, if it had to be during the school year, it's gonna be section by section, right? Like they could rip it all down and make that surface okay for the kids to walk on for one weekend, and then that next Saturday would have to come. It's absolutely ridiculous how long this flooring has taken. But we have agreement at 0 expense that they are going to replace all of it. And we are gonna go up to the high school where we were being tolerant of some gapping, and we've said we're no longer tolerant, and so that will also be redone. So that's the Forest Street flooring update.
Saga, call it
It sure is. It sure is.
What do you think the next one will be? Like, what's the next conundrum?
I'm hoping it's not facility related. How about that? Or maybe, I don't know.
Buses.
Ah.
You know, the flooring buses though.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I just wanted to bring to you tonight the final, or not final, preliminary 25-26 budget. You can go to the next slide, Brandon. Just to remind everybody, or educate everybody, I guess, not sure where you're at in knowing what the process is for the budget for a school district. Our fiscal year starts July 1st. So we are required to have at least a preliminary budget in place by July 1st. Even though we don't know all of our factors till September and October. We learn how many kids we're gonna have, and that is part of the third Friday count in September. And then we develop what's called the revenue limit. And after that, we find out what our property value is. That helps us determine our tax rate. And then equalization aids are certified by the DPI mid-October. That helps us set our tax levy. And then the board has to set a final budget and tax levy in October. And we also have the budget hearing in October. So those things kind of happen the same night. And we give you updates along the way as we know better information. So, go to the next slide. So again, right now we had some preliminary assumptions that we've used. This is just a recap of all the things that you approved along the way as part of our budget development process. That 4% salary pool increase you've seen. We had an actual decrease in premiums by the change we made going to Anthem, and all of the other things that are there. I don't need to read them all to you. I go to the next. We also increased the virtual school credit budget because we were overspending that a little bit, so we had to add a few more funds to that. And then the last couple of things there, the student success coordinator, and then all of those instructional technology programs, that was that $150,000 that the admin team went back to the drawing board and came up with those kinds of solutions. So those are all things that you've approved already and seen and are included in the budget. Just some of the highlights. The budget is balanced, revenues equal expenditures for fund, this is Fund 10 only I'm talking about, $24,228,509. It's actually decreasing from this year to next year. And that's largely due to the ESSER funds that we had and no longer have, but we still had a piece of those ESSER funds in 24-25. So that is the main reason for that. And at the time I did this on Wednesday, the state budget was not known, still not known fully, but the Joint Finance Committee did have some approvals on Thursday. And one of those is special education aid going to 35%. That is one of the approved items as part of the Joint Finance Committee, but that still has to go through all the processes, right, through the governor and everything. We budgeted 31% in this budget, just so you know, so that would be a little bit of an increase of about $180,000. Another item that was included in that Joint Finance Committee motion is the $325, the increase in $325 in the revenue limit per pupil amount. They're not going to put any more equalization aid behind that. That was their recommendation in their proposal. What that means is any increase in the revenue limit would likely go back on the property taxpayers. Fortunately for us, we've had that defeasance in Fund 39 that we're able to reduce for something like this, because you'll see in a moment our Fund 10, and I don't want to get too locked in on the numbers because there's a lot of things that can happen yet before October. So, but just to show you in a few slides, our Fund 10 tax levy is estimated to go up, but some of our other tax levies will go down. So we're able to mitigate that a little bit. You can go to the next slide. So here are some of the major factors of the Fund 10 revenue budget. Again, looking at the past couple of years, and the 25-26 year is on the right. You can see just traveling across the top line, the property tax, how that's been higher than lower this past year, and now that's going to jump up again probably. Another big factor for us is the equalization aid, and I kept that flat. From 24-25 to 25-26, well, that remains to be seen what will happen. And the other big piece is the per pupil categorical aid. I kept that flat as well because there was no increase for that. I guess that you could see the federal revenue, the pandemic funding on there as well, how that has stepped down. That actually, I have to look at that for 25-26. I don't know why that's showing there, but anyways, that's in the wrong line. But the total budget is 24,228,509. Go to the next one. Expenditure budget, you can see the bulk of our expenditures are in salaries, $11 million for 25-26. And we have our state retirement, Social Security, Medicare. You can see the health insurance decrease there as well. Part of the decrease is here in Fund 10, and part of the decrease is in all the other funds, 2750 as well. One of the big expenditures for us, as you can see, is a transfer to Fund 27, just over $3 million. And go to the next slide. Here's our tax levy history. You can track that across. Estimating the levy would be relatively flat or actually even decreasing possibly, even with the general fund portion of the tax levy going up. The referendum debt repayment portion would go down a little bit, and our community service levy would go down a little bit. We had all those startup costs this past year. We wouldn't have those startup costs again. And we do have a little bit of fund balance in Fund 80 to help us if should that be needed as well. And there's just the graphic form showing the differences in each of those levies that I just outlined, how they are, what portion of the total levy that they are. You can go to the next one. I'm estimating just a 2% increase in the equalized value. It probably will be more than that, but I don't know that number until October. So I'm using conservative figure, and that number is important because it helps set the tax rate. So if you look down below, you take our levy divided by the equalized value, and that comes up with a tax rate dropping below $6. So again, these are real preliminary. There will be a lot of information before we get to October that will likely change. Go to the next slide. And there's just the tax rate history over the past several years. We were at 898 in 2019, 2020, and again, dropping as far down to 587 for the tax rate. Some other fund highlights. Fund 39, it does include a $240,000 defeasance to pay off debt. We could either do more or less. That amount doesn't have to be included. It just depends how we want to strategize, how the Fund 10 levy is going to come in, what we want to do there. The Fund 46 is the Capital Maintenance Trust. We have about $53,000 in that. You can go. Fund 50, so different from this past year. The past 2 years, we've had free breakfast and lunch. We are including free breakfast for 25-26. The CEP program, we expanded it to all the buildings this past year, and we're actually expecting to operate it at a loss for this past year. And a lot of that is due to participation. As we move up into the higher levels, we have less participation, so we get less reimbursement for the program. So we're planning ahead and thinking we're only going to do free breakfast for next year. There is some question about how many students will have to go back to the free and reduced applications and the direct certification program. But depending on what the federal government does with SNAP and Medicaid, We don't know how many of those students will then qualify for free and reduced lunch. So it's kind of a real unknown situation at this point. Go to the next slide. Fund 80, that's our community service fund, and again, that includes a levy of just over $200,000. Included in that community service fund is 10% of our activities director's salary and benefits for all the community programs that he does, the gym scheduling, the community education coordinator salary and benefits, and the program costs for that. And even though we'll get parent tuition for the Little Tigers childcare program, it's not fully supported by that, so we need a little bit more through the levy to cover some of those items for salary and benefits and supplies that they need. And again, the state budget it's not done yet. The preliminary budget included none of the things that we had talked about previously, but the 31% for special education funding instead of 35, which is something the Joint Finance Committee's talking about. There is a high cost special education, and I just want to let you know that that's not a lot of dollars for us. We received about a 19% reimbursement for that this year. That was about $12,500. They're talking about a 50% reimbursement for next year. That would be about $30,000 instead. So it's not a lot of dollars because we have to code a lot of those costs to our IDEA grant funding because we don't have the funds. We'd be transferring more funds from Fund 10 to be able to make that work. So I guess that's it. There'll be a lot of changes before October.
Just one piece on the Joint Finance Committee. So there was a lot of advocacy for 60% reimbursement for special education. That would have been a couple $100,000 difference for us. And so
several 400, I think.
$400,000 difference had they gone to the 60%. The fact that they went from our current rate of like 29.5% or whatever to 35, that's great, but it is small potatoes when they had been talking 60 to 70%. There's been a lot of advocacy from districts all over the state that if they increase the reimbursement rate for special education, all districts get a piece of that. The SAA, the School Administrators Alliance, is saying that this change to high-cost special ed is kind of an optics game that the elected officials can say, well, we're putting the money where it really matters in the high-cost special education as opposed to all of special education. So the difference between $400,000 for the school district of Black River Falls versus about $40,000 for, just, it is colossally different. But when you don't understand all of school finance and you want to say we're listening to the advocacy and we're investing in special education, this is where we're at. So if you are so inclined to do any advocacy on behalf of special education reimbursement and are interested in help with letters or anything, I'm very happy to share the ones that I've sent because that's a significant difference for us.
I misspoke, Shelley. At 60%, it's a lot more than 400,000. I think when we were
like
talking
1.3 or something.
Yeah, when we were talking 45%, I think we were talking 400 to 500,000. So it's a lot more at 60%.
Yeah. And so of course it's going to cost the state that much more. They're concerned about all of the things with the state budget as well, but just understanding that difference in special ed reimbursement, just switching it to high cost special ed reimbursement is not even the same conversation. It is such a tiny, tiny piece of that bigger puzzle, and I just wanted to highlight that for anybody that has been following that along.
The no additional funds to the equalization aid formula is also very concerning. So I think we'll be able to mitigate that this year, but next year would probably be a different story.
And at the same time, they're trying to limit at the same time, referendums are back on, there's a new legislation to limit referendum asks and that you can't have reoccurring for longer than 4 years. And so not willing to give you funds and going to make it harder for your communities to vote locally to commit funds. So.
Can we put referendum on the agenda so that we can start kind of figuring that out if we're going to do it?
Sure, we had done a timeline once before and we're concerned about momentum and where that was, but if you guys would like to. I would have to go back and look what month it was, but because we can't ask until
Spring of
26,
Yeah.
spring of 26, and so there was, yes, we absolutely can.
I feel like learning is like making tea, like you dip it once and it's still just water with like a swirl of tea, but like if we're gonna do a referendum, we need to be kind of seeped. And so if we could just do like little tiny, it doesn't have to be a whole 15 minutes, but just give us little like, important, useful information about it monthly until we get to the point where we're like ready to rock and roll.
Okay, I'll do my best.
So we're looking for approval on the total budget amount, and that includes the levy that I presented, but again, this is just a preliminary budget. You will approve the final budget in October.
I make a motion to approve the preliminary budget.
I'll second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
And Act 20 policy is tabled for tonight. That's not included.
Okay, so moving on to previous meeting minutes. Last month, I should say.
Make a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes as written.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. District administrator report.
I just wanted to highlight the impact report that you received from the Great Rivers United Way Hub. I really appreciate their partnership in so much of the work that we do with our community health workers, but also our connection to Jackson County Public Health and Children's Wisconsin and the Servant-led community are all very, very closely aligned. I appreciate that they break down, there's a Jackson County impact, if you would keep scrolling till you find, there we are. I just really appreciate the work of the hub and recognizing that when they count our outcomes, they make sure, I think, again, it's been a while since you've had a presentation on this. When it says 6 individuals, families housed, it's not just that somebody gets into a house for a short term. There's a length of time in which people need to remain housed in order for that pathway to be closed. 12 individuals found and maintained employment. I think that's 6 months after they've been employed, or I don't remember
30 days, and they always make it to 28.
Well,
ship and you start over.
12 maintained it for the 30 days. So
it's harder than you think.
I just wanted to highlight that that is part of the strength of working with Great Rivers United Way is that their outcomes are evidence-based, and we receive reimbursement funding for our community health workers based off of the pathways that are successfully completed. And so that is just a really strong partnership for us and their outreach to Jackson County, and I just wanted to highlight that for you. Otherwise, the end of the school year went fantastically. It was a flurry of celebrations all over the district, and first week of summer school is done at all of the levels, and I think people are ready for some time away. That's all that I have.
Could you touch base a little bit on the community education of Little Tigers?
Sure. Right now or for next week? Both. How about? So the community education coordinator, she has her fall catalog getting really close to ready to roll. Sarah Brown is her name. I do not remember numbers, but I most certainly will send them out to you. She's got a really wide variety of connections that people that have committed to doing some type of event or service or series in the fall. She's doing lots of PR marketing stuff. She is not 12 months, and so she works for, I think, another week, and then she has off July and a bit of June, and then she comes back in August. The community calendar is slowly launching. We're hoping to be able to have that be a little bit more robust, but she needs to get in touch with other agencies who are then sharing their stuff. The idea was that families had one-stop shopping. Her space is over at Red Creek, and I think she's just very quietly accumulating an awful lot of connections through town, which is that first step to being able to offer them. So the hope is that by fall there will be posters with all of the offerings that are out and links on the website, and she's currently working on doing the back work of a web page that's all about our community education pieces. So yeah, she's doing great stuff. Little Tigers Daycare, I was not over there today. I'm not positive where their numbers are, but I certainly will do a progress check and will email that out to you. I know that Caitlin is feeling much better being in week 2 than she was in week 1, and things just keep looking up for her. So staffing is stable and their number of kids continues to grow, but I will get you those numbers and share them out. Yeah.
All right, so WASB report. Anything, Michaela?
CISA 4 had their meeting at the beginning of the month. I wasn't able to make it because I was out on medical leave, but I believe that Randy and I were elected as representatives from our area. Randy is over at Alma Center. So will we continue to participate in the CISA 4 stuff and bring stuff back when we can?
Okay. Conference workshop attendance.
The admin team is going next week to a Creating a Culture of Excellence conference in Green Bay that we're very excited about. There's some amazing national speakers, Doug Reeves, and it is a unique conference that they have identified different districts from around the state of schools that are really shining in different areas, and they're all coming to one big conference, elementary, middle, and high school examples of, and they're all telling their stories of what they've done. And so our whole team is going to go over and divide and conquer all of those lessons to be learned. So we're excited about that.
The Summer Symposium, or what is it called? Summer
Symposium.
Fling. Conference is also in the weekend.
Fling at the end of symposium doesn't feel right, but
it's in July, so if anybody on the board is interested, it's the week of the 12th. So, and it's 2 or 3 days. It's 2 days, sorry. Yeah. And I went last year, and it was interesting. So.
That's not the public education one.
No.
That's WASB.
That was a whole different deal.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting. It's so interesting.
Okay. School board connection opportunities.
That was historically put there so that the board could talk about different ways that you had either chosen to or thought of to engage in different ways. If that is, it started off that we tried making a list of opportunities that you would have, and then it evolved into just talking about it briefly at the end of each meeting. So it's your choice if you want that to continue as an agenda item.
It's fine, we don't have to talk about everyone, it's just this stuff comes up. You know?
Should we have like a barbecue? Just as like a not business barbecue, but just like a regular like team building barbecue at some point. I know there's people here that I'd like to get to know better, and it would give us an opportunity to like be humans and rather than just.
Are there quorum problems with things like
As long
that?
as we don't do any school business. So we can do a social gathering as long as there is not any business completed.
You talk about yourself. I guess just keep your minds open and looking for different connections, such as fundraising opportunities that some of our local clubs and sport groups might be doing throughout the summer to try to raise money. There's a lot of different stuff. There's things that did happen during the month of May, you know, obviously with the fundraising that happened at Lunda Center for the athletic programs. And I mean, the more of those type of things that we can participate at and be at is good for our board.
Hockey, any quick thing or not being there, just 2 weeks away, 28th?
Yeah, it's coming up here. Yeah, so.
Might be there. Yeah, okay, moving on to future agenda items.
2.
Just one, talk about one at a time, okay?
This is my 3rd year. I always ask about hiring another nurse. Today Alex would talk about it. So maybe this could be put it in a future agenda to talk about it, to hire nurse number 2.
I think when we start talking about referendum, we sure can. Because we just
We
set the
just
budget.
approved the budget, right?
So the only way you're gonna get it
But
there
that
is-
budget was preliminary. I don't know how to pronounce preliminary. The final is in October. So that is, I was wondering, I bring this thing up every year. Hiring nurse number 2, accountant number 2. That's the name of movie though. We have 2 accountant 2.
At least you have to bring a recommendation for what's gonna come out. If you know the cost of an additional nurse, right, and the budget, we just set a preliminary budget, figure out what you're gonna ask the admin to not spend money on in order to get another nurse.
Or we could talk about in the future agenda, or we can hire an aide of a nurse.
Well, they did that already.
We have already.
Yeah,
We're not
one at
like
each school.
here to talk, like debate like this, we're talking about the future agenda.
Yeah.
But they did add, in each building a, assistant for the nurse.
Okay.
Which will help out, I mean, that's like a step this year.
And the community health workers are huge. So like if something falls health-wise outside the scope of the nurse, there's 2 community health workers on staff that can kind of swoop in and guide them through the process.
Very different skill sets. Community health workers do not have any additional, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see any building making that connection. No, we use our community health workers to help families access the programs and navigate the systems, not to provide direct services.
But if they were in need of additional services outside of what the nurse provides, they should be able to step in and connect.
Yes,
correct?
yes,
Yeah,
yep.
So out of curiosity, when would be the appropriate time to start talking about filling needs in that regard?
So Jill had a slide up there that talked about the budget process. November, December is when we're usually generating our lists, and then we wait, and as spring comes along, we start that reprioritization. If we really want these things, what are we willing to give up for them? And then we have to wait and see how our health insurance comes in, all of those other pieces. So it's slowly, I would say November, December, the admin is definitely talking about it. And then as spring goes by, more of those abstract numbers become concrete, and then that helps us keep fine tuning it.
So can we then put a pin in it and we'll come back in October?
October. So we can talk about in October.
Okay.
And also last board meeting I brought up, since we have more than 400 children in high school and only 4 English teacher, we could increase 1 more English teacher, you said, in the time of budget. And so it could be a future agenda. See, we can squeeze some money out of a $24 million, right? $24 million you showed us. So out of $24 million, we could hire newbie kind of an English teacher, which is not very expensive. It would be a good idea. It's just a future agenda. We could discuss about it.
October
Okay, October 2.
seems similar. This could be a budget change.
Okay, it's worth talking about it. Thank you.
Any
I
other,
wish you good night.
any other future agenda items?
Just waving my hand again here to hear more updates on when things are gonna move on the MOU or how things are moving on the MOU. I did want that to be at least a monthly poke, like what's going on with that, and there wasn't much of a poke this month, so.
Alright,
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nobody opposed.
What happens then?
Have you seen the movie Accountant 2?
Thanks
It's very scary. You guys remind me today. I was controlling my laugh.